Are we on air? We are? Too far away. Huh? They are. Good night or good evening, everyone. We are going to call our Truckee Town Council meeting of July 26, 2022 to order. Lynn, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Excuse me. Councilmember Pallavi.
Here.
Vice Mayor Romack.
Here.
Mayor Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Klovstad.
Here.
And Councilmember Zabriskie.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And would everyone please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us in that this evening, and it's so nice to have some members of the public with us tonight. We're going to move right into item 4.0. This is general public comment. It's an opportunity to provide a public comment on any item that is not specifically on the agenda this evening. Our public comment podium is back up here by the dais, and you have 3 minutes to make a public comment. As always, please state your name for the record. The timer is over here, and if you get to 3 minutes, we will rein you in order to make sure everyone has an equitable chance at making their public comment.
Hold on. All right, thank you. Hi, my name is Susie Tarnay. This is a tough subject. I didn't stand during the Pledge of Allegiance now or last week, and I wanted to take a moment to explain why. The first clause of the Bill of Rights states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. But by combining our local government sessions with a pledge, including a reference to God, I feel that we blur this separation on a regular basis. Freedom of religion inherently means freedom from religion as well. I've acquiesced to the pledge for years now, both as a member of the public and a planning commissioner. I've consciously decided not to make waves in the interest of being polite and allowing all sides to have their say. I regularly stayed silent during the under God part. But silence means approval, and I don't approve. I don't approve of the radical religious right currently seated on our Supreme Court. I don't approve of the GOP's vote against a woman's right to contraception. And honestly, neither does the majority of Americans. In the interest of being polite, we've allowed the creep of a single religion to become the status quo. So in lieu of the standard pledge, I'd like to offer a town-specific pledge instead. I pledge allegiance to this town and to the wonderful people that fill it, and to the mountains and trees in which we stand, one city, under blue skies, with kindness and equity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tarnay.
Good evening, Mayor Henderson, Council, Patrick Flora. This will be a somewhat lighter topic. I actually have a request for the Council. I would ask you, if when you have a few minutes, to go to the town's homepage, and Jen, you are free to play along as well. Navigate to the public comments section for agendized items, as the public has to. I think you'll find it an enlightening experience, and hopefully that maybe will lead you to see if staff can't make that a slightly more user-friendly interface. Roughly 9 pages you have to click through to actually get to public comment. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Would anyone else like to make a general public comment this evening? Seeing none, we will close public comment and move into our presentations. And this evening, we're going to start with item 5.1, and we're introducing several returning staff. Jen, are you going to be presenting this to start?
No, we have Riley here and our building official, Mike, and they'll be introducing for their teams. So I think we could start with our building official for the building division.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to introduce three, I would call them new people, although two of them do have a past background with the town of Truckee. The first member that I'd like to discuss is Kim Dobble. Kim Dobble is a longtime resident living here in Truckee since 1990. That makes her a 32-year veteran to the jurisdiction. She started employment with Nevada County Building Division prior to the town incorporating in 93. She would continue her service with the town of Truckee from 93 to 2016 when she chose to retire. In the most recent past, having some spare time and the passion for Truckee, Kim has returned to part-time employment with the Building Division, helping the Building Division refine the plan review process. Kim enjoys horseback riding, paddleboarding, camping in her spare time. Kim, if you could stand up for the group, please. As a side note, Council, in the course of looking into Kim Dobble, hands down, the town employees currently refer to her as a powerhouse plan reviewer, which has solidified my decision on having her come back into work and has been an outstanding asset to this point. Our next new yet longtime employee, Pasita, I'm going to mess this up, Revi. She comes to us from the Bay Area, Alameda. She is a 32-year Truckee resident. Much like Kim Dobble, she worked for Nevada County Building Division from 1990 to 93, working for Town of Truckee Building Incorporation 93 to 96. In 97, retired. I'm sorry, in 1997, retired in 2016. I think I messed that up a little bit, but we understand. I like the part that she indicated in here. She married her fourth grade crush, Tom Ravi. They have been married now 43 years. They have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Tom, her husband, worked for the town of Truckee from 2001. Town of Truckee 2001 to retire in 2018 as the Department of Public Works road manager. He and Pasita enjoy hiking, mountain bike riding, kayaking, and visiting inland islands 2 to 3 times a year. Pasita, if you could stand up. And I would have to say again, from my standpoint, Pasita has been a valuable asset in a new building division. Both Kim and Pasita bring something that I think a lot of jurisdictions have suffered from, which was understanding a customer service prior to COVID-19 and closing our doors. Pasita has been a valuable asset on helping me pull the building division permitting staff in and finding a well-rounded avenue to be able to produce permits under the way we used to do it and our current way we do it now. Much like I said with Kim, I am pleased to have her on board. And my final employee, Bibiano Lopez Jr. Bibiano comes to us from the San Fernando Valley, located in the Los Angeles Basin. He comes to us with a 30-year background as a contractor in the plumbing industry. While in high school, he worked part-time with his father as a plumber. After graduating high school, he worked full-time in the family plumbing business as well as attended college, and eventually took over his family business. Bibiano has been married for 10 years, has 2 children. Him and his family decided to vacate the Southern California area for a more relaxed way of living. Having family in the Reno area and visiting Truckee several times, decided to make the move into the jurisdiction. The move to Truckee for both him and his family, and having family in Reno, the entire family are, in theory and in short, outdoor enthusiasts. Bibiano does provide a good background. I'm always preferable to know that we have field-orientated individuals that understand both the contracting world, but also as well the laws, rules, and regulations that a jurisdiction must follow. Bibiano, in his short time here, has exercised outstanding acceleration and is an individual that I see to be a long-term fit for the town of Truckee. With that being said, thank you, Council. Bibiano, if you could stand, please. And thank you again, Council.
Thank you so much, Mike. Riley, do you want to come up to the podium?
Mayor, while Riley's on his way up, I just want to really welcome all the new staff, but a special thank you to Kim and Pasita for unretiring and coming back to help us out. And thanks to your families for sharing you with us for a little while. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to introduce a few new employees we have in the Public Works Department. And just to follow up with all the returning, once we're retired folks, it feels like a high school reunion I never attended. But so great to see Pasita and Kim back working for the town. So we have 3 new employees in the Public Works Department. The first employee is Carlos Reyes. Carlos grew up in Humboldt County. Carlos, please stand up. He grew up in the Humboldt County, small town of Ferndale. He grew up working on a dairy farm in Ferndale, working with his dad and other family members. His recent work experience has been in landscaping and as a grocery clerk at the new Raley's One Market. That's where we found him. Carlos played soccer in high school and continues his love of soccer as a referee, a soccer referee for all the soccer clubs around the region. So thanks for joining the team, Carlos. Our next employee is Todd Curtis. Todd grew up in Northern California. He was raised on a horse farm breeding Arabian horses in Sonoma County. Todd went to school to study photography and traveled through Europe and lived in Paris for a while, developing his photography career. Todd has worked in the film industry before transitioning into a career in construction, where he worked on the many bridge construction projects around the Bay Area, including the new Bay Bridge expansion. Todd has worked for the last 12 years for the city of Brisbane before he relocated his family to Truckee and seeking out his dream job. That's what he said, dream job, with the Town of Truckee Public Works Department. He's been here about a little over a month, and I asked him today if this is still his dream job, and sure enough, it is. Todd is married with 2 teenage boys and enjoys coaching the Truckee High School baseball team. Welcome aboard, Todd. Our third and last new employee, Ross Payne. Please stand up. Looks good in orange. Attaboy. Ross grew up in Stockton, California. He searched out employment with the Town of Truckee Public Works Department after getting engaged to a Ravy. Ross, in his previous employment, was a dedicated special education teacher for the Galt Unified School District for severely disabled kids in the high school. His kind spirit and experience with dealing with people of all kinds will be an asset working in the Public Works Department. Ross enjoys the outdoors, fishing, camping, and motorcycle riding. Welcome to the team, Ross. And thank you, Council, for the opportunity to announce the new employees.
Riley, thank you so much for that. I just want to extend a very warm welcome. Many of you are returning. It's so wonderful to have you back. And the town, like many other agencies and many of our businesses, has been hard hit after COVID and getting our staffing back. So we are so grateful that you are back on our family and back on the team. So welcome, everyone. Thank you. Okay, with that, Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you for 5.2, our town manager report.
Great, thank you. Good evening. It's great to have members of the public here tonight. A few announcements for those that are here and anybody watching. The town will be co-hosting the first National Night Out for the town. That is coming up next week, August 2nd at Regional Park from 3 to 7 p.m. CHP will be there, Truckee Fire, there will be games and face painting and lots of family fun. So we hope you all can join us for that event. The TART Connect microtransit pilot program, just a reminder that that is still ongoing. You can sign up for your free ride on TART Connect app, or you can call 530-214-5811. Also, wildfire season is here. When it comes to concerns for air quality, it's important to take precautions and avoid outdoor activities, especially when there's degraded air quality. So please check your websites for that information and take proper precautions. In line with that, the town has just put out the, in conjunction with Nevada County and the fire district, the evacuation routes handout, as well as information on PSOMs. Council members, you have those at the dais, and for anybody here in the public, there's handouts in the back. And then World Nature Conservation Day will be observed on July 28th. Just wanted to give a shout out for that, and anybody that would like to celebrate that day, as we know we are trying to protect and conserve our natural resources. And good news, there's still lots of opportunity to get involved and participate in the general plan update process. We have 3 meetings coming up in August. August 10th is the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee meeting, where they'll be reviewing the draft downtown specific plan. August 16th, another joint town council planning commission meeting for the community character element, economic development element, and conservation and open space elements. Those are all draft as well. And then August 23rd, another joint planning commission and town council meeting for the draft EIR review. So if you're interested, please get involved, submit comments. We will look into the public comment form and participate in your community and what the future of your community holds. And then lastly, another great news, if you'd like to join Riley's great team on the in the streets department, we are hiring. So check out the town's webpage for open job announcements. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Jen. With that, we will open public comment. Would anyone like to make a public comment on any of the presentations this evening? If so, you may step to the podium now. Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and move immediately into consent calendar. And we only have 2 items this evening. 6.1, adopting resolution 2022-41, approving the abandonment of a roughly 1,100 square foot portion of the access easement along the southeastern property line of 13439 Hillside Drive. We also have 6.2, authorizing the town manager to execute a contract amendment with Integrated Design 360 in the amount of $4,900 for a total amended contract amount of $53,466 for the purpose of holding 2 additional stakeholder advisory committee meetings to support REACH code development. Approving a budget amendment to adjust allocation of funds for project C1510 to account for the timing of the expenses related to the project. With that, do I have any of my fellow council members who would like to pull a consent item tonight? No. Jen, or any member of staff who would like to pull a consent item tonight?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. And do we have any member of the public who would like to pull a consent item tonight? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion we approve consent.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And consent calendar passes unanimously. Thank you for that. So with that, we're going to move into our discussion items this evening. We have 4 discussion items tonight. We're going to start with 7.1. This is the 2021 Community Development Annual Report. And I just want to say before we move directly into the staff presentation, this felt so timely as we've been discussing build out in the general plan process, and just understanding all of the projects that have recently been completed and under construction. I think it was really additional, just helpful additional context as we're working on the 2040 general plan as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for our presentation, and then we'll move into council questions as always.
All right. Good evening. My name is Lucas Cannell, and I'm an assistant planner here with the town of Truckee. I'm here to present the Community Development Department's annual report for 2021. The purpose of this report is to satisfy state requirements for reporting for the Office of Planning and Research, as well as the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and also to track progress of general plan implementation, housing element plan implementation, and growth and development, as well as informing the community and our town's decision makers. In 2021, the town of Truckee saw both housing and population growth. While the state as a whole saw a 0.46% decrease in population and Nevada County experienced a 0.31% decrease, Truckee now has a population of 16,213 people and 13,670 housing units. In 2021, the vacancy rate for Truckee was 51.4% of households, and the houses that were occupied on a full-time basis had an average of 2.43 persons per household. Comparatively, the state of California had 7.6% vacancy rate and had a 2.91% persons per household, while Nevada County had a vacancy rate of 21.3% and averaged 2.25 persons per household. According to building permit data, the town of Truckee added 53 single-family residences, 160 multifamily residences, and 3 accessory dwelling units in 2021. Despite major challenges in the construction industry, including supply chain disruptions resulting in higher construction costs, building permit activity has remained higher than ever. 3 major residential projects completed work and received their final certificates of occupancy in 2021. These projects included Coldstream Commons with 48 affordable units, Grocery Outlet with 3 workforce housing units, and the Truckee Artist Lofts with 76 affordable units and 1 manager's unit. In 2021, there was 138 residential units that were physically under construction or part of a larger project that had not reached full build-out. Here you can see the 8 projects that were under construction and how many units remain to be constructed. There are several major residential projects that received land use approvals in 2021, where construction has not yet started. In total, these 8 approved housing developments include 171 single-family and multifamily units. Residential build-out is defined as the development of land to its full potential or theoretical capacity under the current zoning designations. The 2025 general plan estimates that the residential build-out for Truckee is 19,901 dwelling units. This build-out would result in a projected population of 28,263 people. Some properties may be built out to higher or lower densities based on incentives or site constraints. However, these discrepancies are expected to be minimal. These projections are also expected to change upon the adoption of the 2040 general plan. In 2021, Truckee added 48,019 square feet of non-residential floor area. The Community Development Department estimates there is now 4.02 million square feet of residential floor space that has been constructed, with half of that being commercial, not including lodging. 3 non-residential projects were completed in 2021 for a total of 48,019 square feet, including high-altitude fitness climbing gym, Grocery Outlet, and The Rock Building F. In 2021, there was 11 non-residential projects under construction for a total of 109,363 square feet. In 2021, there were 8 projects with non-residential floor space that had valid land use entitlements. 3 additional non-residential projects were approved in 2021, totaling 225,679 square feet of approved non-residential square footage that is yet to begin construction. The general plan estimates that the non-residential build-out for the town based on general plan land use designations and intensities would be 4,909,700 square feet of floor space. According to those estimates, the town is currently at 80.5% of non-residential build-out. Upon completion of all non-residential floor space currently under construction or approved, the town will be almost 90% of non-residential build-out. The town continues to work on implementation of the general plan goals, policies, and actions, which were initially adopted in November of 2006 under the 2025 general plan. The town is in the process of a general plan update, which was initiated in February of 2018 and is currently in phase 7 of 8 total phases, and adoption is currently slated for late 2022. Town Council adopted the 2019-2027 housing element in August of 2019 to help ensure that housing needs of all economic segments of the community can be met. This included the implementation of our ADU pilot program, the long-term rental grant program, which helps to incentivize current homeowners to long-term rent their vacant homes, SB2 site rezone, which uses state funds to help promote housing growth on opportune sites within the town, Pacific Crest Commons, an affordable housing project being developed by the state with town partnership, Measure K, which increases the town's transient occupancy tax from 10 to 12%, and the First-Time Home Buyers Town Payment Assistance Program, which helps with loan assistance to first-time home buyers. The town of Truckee has taken our environment seriously and has laid the groundwork for a more sustainable future. These actions include reducing our impact on the environment by curtailing greenhouse gas emissions, hiring positions and creating committees dedicated to sustainability, implementing green building initiatives, improving the town's fleet of vehicles and installing charging infrastructure, reducing waste and litter, restoring habitat, and improving air quality. Truckee has closely looked at land use within our community to make improvements to housing, economic development, sustainable mobility, and quality of life. This has resulted in update to plans for our downtown expansion, expansion of our existing trail systems, plans for increased open space and recreation areas, and revisions to the town's development code to better reflect our general plan policies, community goals, state laws, and to address current trends. The town has strived to diversify transit opportunities in order to make traveling more convenient as well as environmentally friendly. This has included expanding bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, pedestrian-friendly recreation opportunities, evaluating vehicle miles traveled for new projects, new intersection roundabouts, transit service expansion and new transit shelters, microtransit opportunities, and an e-bike sharing program. The town has strived to maintain its culture while experiencing rapid growth. In order to do this, the town has applied for a local early action planning grant to develop objective design standards to help keep Truckee Truckee. The town has also adopted a public art master plan and has continued in its effort to promote historic preservation through the Mills Act program, which gives homeowners a tax break in exchange for maintaining their historic homes, and through the historic design review process, which aids in maintaining the town's historic feel. The town has implemented economic development programs to increase job and tax base, create and retain sustainable living wage jobs, and help diversify the local economy, as well as promote Truckee as a great place to live, work, or visit. This has included helping small businesses during COVID by providing grants and reducing land use requirements. The town is always looking for ways to make Truckee a safer and more desirable place to live. Recent steps to help combat the issues of our time include new evacuation modeling for safe egress in the event of a disaster, increased public communication, and vegetation reduction to improve emergency evacuation and wildfire preparedness. This was a snapshot of the progress the town has made in 2021, and we are working on making Truckee a wonderful place to live in 2022. Thank you.
Lucas, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Tonight we're voting on accepting the 2021 Community Development Annual Report and directing staff to file that with the state as required. So with that, I'm going to open up to council questions, and I'll start on this side. Councilmember Pallavi or Vice Mayor Romack, any questions? No. Any questions on this side, Councilmember Klofstad?
No, just I always enjoy these reports, so thank you very much.
No questions. Okay. With that, we'll move immediately into public comment for this specific agenda item. If anyone has a public comment they'd like to make, you can step up to the podium now. Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and move into any deliberation that anyone would like to have on this item. Again, I'll return to this side. Councilmember Pallavi.
No comments. Thank you. Well done. Very clear. Welcome to your first presentation, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Romack.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was great to read. As you said, Mayor, fits along well with our discussions on the general plan. And just thank you to staff. You guys spend a lot of time doing lots of different reports for lots of different reasons. So I know it's probably cumbersome sometimes, but we do really appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Klofstad.
echo all the same. I'll just add that I've already put this to good use and sent it to 2 different constituents that had questions about our housing capacity, so it is an incredibly useful reference document as well.
Right, I'll echo my other council members. One thing to keep in mind is a lot of community members have different ideas about the existing population, about the size of our existing population and what it's going to be. I noticed that on the population figures here, we had the current population or the 2021 population at about 16,200. We had a report a few weeks ago, probably based on different data, either Department of Finance or Census, U.S. Census or some other source that had us up around 17,000. So that's something we should all be aware of, that the actual number differs depending on what your source is. So let's avoid arguments over whether it's 16,200 or 17,000. That's something I try to be aware of. And then I'm fine with the report. The other thing, though, in reporting vacancy, maybe in the future be good to elaborate more specifically. The vacancy rate mostly reflects how many homes are second homes. So probably the more valuable form of information is how many homes are primary and how many are secondary, because that's a big issue in the community. Okay. Otherwise, I'm ready to approve it.
Okay. Well, with that, would you like to make the motion?
Yes, I move that we approve the 2021 Community Development Department Annual Report as recommended by staff.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Lucas, again, thank you for the presentation, and thank you to everyone who worked on putting this together. There was a lot of data and great information in there. Thank you. So with that, we'll move into item 7.2, clean up the lake, Donner Lake Monitoring Agreement. And as always, we'll start with our staff presentation. And Jen, you're doing this one, correct?
I am.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll turn it right over to you.
Okay. I think while I'm pulling this up, we have Colin here. Yes, Colin West is here from Clean Up the Lake. So if there's any technical questions, he's available to respond to those. Or if you have anything directly you'd like him to respond to, that's an option as well. This is a pretty straightforward item tonight. We're asking for 2 pieces of action from the council. One is to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Clean Up the Lake to complete Donner Lake monitoring program in an amount not to exceed $16,603. This would be a partnership with already contributing members. And we do have a CIP budget project for this, CIP 2314. It's our climate partnerships budget. There was $20,000 appropriated when we were able to identify climate partnerships specifically with Donner Lake, so it would fall under that category. And then secondly, to provide direction to staff regarding an educational art installation. So the proposed scope of work for this project is to do cleaning and monitoring of a 0 to 25 foot zone across 8 miles circumference of a lake. Sample hotspots at greater depths. There will be a minimum of 3 samplings from up to 75 feet in depth. Data collection on invasive species and alga blooms, and then data collection and comparison. So it's really serving a couple purposes. One, to do a cleanup in the lake, but also to gather data, have GPS reference points, have that data to see differences from when this was done a couple of years ago, as well as another data point for in the out years should another project be completed. As I mentioned, this is a partnership. There's already some significant funding partners that have come to the table. The total project cost for this is almost $14,000. The request for the town is $16,602. We'd be joining Rayleigh's, Parasol, Community Foundation, Truckee Tahoe Lumber, Tahoe Mountain Resorts, and the Martis Fund if we entered into this agreement. It should be noted that the work has already started, and they've already collected, I believe it's over 1,700 pounds of litter from the work that they've done so far. The second action item that you'll be discussing later is art installation. Down here in the right-hand corner, this is Ethel the whale. She was constructed out of 5,000 pounds of recycled trash that was picked up. She's 82 feet, a life-sized, 82 feet, a life-sized whale. And she was completed by Building 180, which is comprised of 2 artists. And we wanted to give you this as a concept of what an art installation piece could potentially look like. In talking with Clean Up the Lake and Colin in particular, the estimated budget is $35,000 to $50,000 for an art install. If you recall, you did allocate money to the Arts Commission for projects, so there's some unallocated money available to the commission should you want to pursue this. We'd have some questions for council to provide direction to staff on. And I have some more specifics in the later slide, but really are you looking, if you want to refer this to the Art Commission, would you ask that they do a call for artists or prefer they use the existing Building 180? I believe that's who South Lake is also using for their art install. You could just do a call for projects versus a call for artists. So if you want to direct the planning or the Arts Commission to use Building 180, you could suggest they do a call for projects. So what could this concept be? Maybe a bear in a bear box or something that would be appropriate for our area. The location of the art install and what exactly the Public Art Commission would be discussing and what their role is. Is it to make a recommendation to come back to council or to proceed forward? So those are questions we'd have for you tonight. So we broke this out. The first item is to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement with Clean Up the Lake. And then the next item would be to provide direction on an art install if you're interested in that component.
Jen, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Let's move right into council questions. I'm going to start on this side. Councilmember Klofstad, would you like to start us off with any outstanding questions you have?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, easy. Councilmember Zabriskie, any questions?
Just a follow-up to the question I posed that Colin answered in great detail, but I still would like to get a better sense if Colin's able to share it or someone on staff as to that ability to use the observations and the photographic evidence to determine the density of invasive species, whether it's how many quagga mussels there are per square meter, that sort of thing. I think from reading your answer, it comes down to just how good the resolution is of photography, how close they are. But could you elaborate just a little bit, Colin? Give us an idea. You'd need to come up here.
Yeah, Colin, if you could go to the podium over there and just make sure the red light is on for the microphone. Thank you.
I believe it's on. Yes, so as far as the resolution of the video or photography, we're using a variety of state-of-the-art camera equipment. Sometimes, we have cinema cameras that can get underwater, but for the data recording, we're just using one of the latest models, the GoPro Hero Black editions that do provide high-resolution photography or up to 4K video. So we can get really high-definition content as far as the specifics of anything that we're getting. But when it comes to the invasive species that we've seen so far, they're pretty typical of the region. We've seen a high density of Asian clams throughout the entire part of the lake that we've gone through so far, over half of it. Sad to see, but we have been documenting the density difference, both in the ways that I described. We see stronger abundance in certain clam beds. We're GPS pinpointing that and getting photo and video of that. And then we're also logging with a kind of verbal log from the professional diver that's out that day, documenting just a description of what we saw in that quarter-mile transect. And so from that to crawdads, which are obviously pretty specific around here, but yet invasive, those are the two that we've really seen. And I think if we are to come across any other plant species, any other invasives, the focus, the detail, the content that we're going to pull out from that is going to be extreme. And we're probably going to surface and begin talking to people about what we saw so that we can get back and address any invasives problems immediately.
Okay, I realize when you set out Clean Up the Lake, you may not have quite had so much science involved in your project, but I'm really glad to see that you took it on. One of my big concerns is while the environment is not amenable to quagga mussels right now, that could all change. and I think we all appreciate how important it is to catch an invasive like quagga mussel early on in order to have a chance of eliminating it from the aquatic environment.
Yeah, and speaking of a couple of years ago when we started and Donner Lake being our first project, we were figuring a lot out as we went. But I do remember coming across, I believe, 2 mussel shells when we were down there in 2020. We have not seen anything, and I've had my eyes out extremely looking for more. And yeah, good news so far is we haven't found any, but of course if we do, it'll be on a lot of people's agenda. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you, Colin. Councilmember Zabriskie, any other questions?
No, those are all.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Womack, any questions? Colin, it's to you. And it's, you know, your name and logo is fantastic, but just curious if you'd ever consider adding a little Donner Lake outline or make it clean up the lakes, plural. Just, we appreciate the work you're doing here, so to just recognize you're over here too.
We gotta get you down to the piers and check out those signs. We gotta clean up the lake logo with Donner Lake emblem there as well. So
Perfect, thank you.
And I just have one quick question, and it's also for you, Colin. In some recent communications, more through my private business side of things, we were talking about this project, I believe, and I'm just really wondering or confirming that this is the last funding piece that you were looking for. You were sort of looking at some private donors, et cetera, and this is that funding piece that we were talking about a couple months ago, I believe.
likely, yeah. So for Clean Up the Lake, we focus on project funding and trying to fund specific projects, and then also seeking community partnerships or funding for overhead or unrestricted costs that we face in the business. So we did launch a community partnership program that might have been more of what Zach Smith and I were talking to you guys about, which would go to fund the work that we're doing as an organization and a lot of the overhead costs that really exist with the nonprofit. And so then the specific project costs that are focused on that specific project might seek different partnerships. But our focus has definitely changed since we began. And I think when we started, it was, jumping in the water and being like, oh my gosh, these beautiful lakes have litter underneath them. Who knew? We want to clean them up. And so we started doing these circumnavigated cleanups. And as we've evolved and grown our team, we've been developing more of a 5-year plus plan where we're focusing on that pilot research in year 1, getting out doing cleanups in year 2 in a massive way, and then kind of beginning to develop those programs, monitoring, and beginning more education and awareness, which is a big part of what we're trying to do with art installations. So we've been fortunate enough to have partners at the south end of Tahoe and working on something down there with them. And this is, something that independently is really important to clean up the lake. And so we're excited to work art installations, educational campaigns, PSAs, and all sorts of stuff. And we're beginning to focus on youth programs as well. So it's all kind of evolved, but I hope that gives more of a long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was just trying to put all the pieces together, so I appreciate that. And I wear a lot of hats, as you know, and I didn't ever know which hat I had on sometimes when we were talking. So appreciate to make that, and probably appreciate Councilmember Klofstad for pushing this through is my guess on that one. And I don't know who this is a question for. It could be for staff, could be for you. Just quickly on Building 180. Is that who you guys have worked with historically and just have a good relationship with? Is that the impetus for why it's in front of us, strictly as them being the artist?
Yeah, so Building 180 we became aware of Building 180 through our partners Tahoe Fund. So Tahoe Fund and working with Tahoe Blue Vodka are commissioning that piece in South Lake, and we're working to provide that litter and clean it and be able to all work together for that piece down there. The 2 artists that were mentioned here are the ones that are spearheading that project down there and are absolutely viable candidates for this project. Not necessarily the people that we would have to go with for sure, but they're fully capable. And I think for putting them out there is an amazing example of what you can do with litter as a medium for art. And so I think there's multiple opportunities there in this community as well. Being so kind of tied in as a stopover for Burning Man, there's a lot of opportunities also to launch art installations like that in communities like that and find a fixed location back here in Truckee, for instance. So I think Building 180 is great. We could totally go with them, but that's just a good starting point, I would say.
I would just add, Councilmember Pallavi, that is probably the quickest path forward versus sending out an RFP for an artist.
Got it.
And are we in a rush, or are we just looking to use the litter that's going to be collected through this search, or are we, I guess, are we?
Yeah, I would refer to Colin if there's a time period to use the litter, but other than potentially that, we're not in a rush. It would be council's, priority, how quickly you'd like to see something out there.
Copy that. Great.
Yeah, I mean, time-wise for us, I think, the education, the awareness and driving that is a big initiative for us to begin kind of finalizing some of those installations and things in early mid-2023. But as far as a rush, we're pretty fluid with it. I mean, there's storage concerns and getting them off my property and into another spot. Had my girlfriend loading tires yesterday, but we're, I think storage is the only thing, but we are working on a storage solution for the Donner Lake litter, and it is becoming quite a bit, so I think knowing if there is support will be helpful, but
got it. I see how it all comes together. Thank you. Just trying to make sure I got all those pieces. I have no further questions.
Councilmember, that is why we offered the idea that you could do a call for projects. You could ask the Art Commission to solicit ideas for a project that maybe then could go to these artists.
I got that one. Thank you, and I think that's a great idea. Awesome.
Okay, wonderful. So with that, we will open public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, you can step to the podium now. Seeing none, we will close public comment and move into deliberations. And of course, we have two components to this. Jen, thank you for pulling this back up. So authorizing our town manager to execute a contract in an amount not to exceed $16,603. And then we also have, I think, some conversation around providing direction to staff regarding educational art installation. So Councilmember Quostet, I will start with you if you don't mind.
Do you want to take them together or separate them?
Why don't we take them together?
Okay, easy enough. I don't think that will be difficult. Colin, what a long way you have come from, I don't know how long ago it was that we first started chatting. I was trying to figure that out. And yes, he really does have this stuff stored at his house. Obviously, I'm in full support of this. Donner Lake is such a jewel for our community, and I'm thrilled to be supporting a collaborative agreement like this with such an amazing organization. And for anybody that hasn't seen how they separate and log the trash, it's pretty incredible. I mean, it's very scientific. They sort it by type of material. They sort it by the generation of where it would come from, and they take just copious photos and videos and weigh it. And I mean, the cataloging is pretty amazing. So if you go to their website, they have some great photos. They also have a couple of really cool videos to watch. I also am in full support of going forward with a call for project ideas and moving that along, not only to get it off of Colin's property, but also because I find these art pieces to be incredibly impactful. The mosaic of Lake Tahoe out of plastic is both beautiful and powerful in what it says about what comes out of our lake. I don't know how many people have been to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, but their sculpture, plastic sculpture of extractions is incredibly impactful. So I would love to see something like this in Truckee and help people understand that, yeah, when you go underwater, there is a lot of trash down there, and we would like to avoid having it get there in the first place. So with that, I'm in full support of the agreement and in moving forward in staff's recommendation for the art piece. And I'll just close with saying that I want to thank you so much, Colin, for your commitment to this, and to our lakes, to our environment. Your enthusiasm is infectious, which is demonstrated by how many people love coming and volunteering for you.
Beautifully said, thank you. And just to confirm, I heard you say you support a call for project ideas, so directing it to the Public Arts Commission for a call for project ideas Did you want to weigh in at all on setting a budget or any of the other items, or would you prefer that the commission comes up with recommendations on that?
I think the estimate is useful as a starting point, and I would leave it to the Art Commission to determine that based on the ideas that come forward. But my intention there being, it's not that it's a huge rush. It's not like we have a deadline for this, but for me, the sooner the better, because it's going to be more impactful to our community and our visitors the sooner we get it constructed and displayed.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie.
I agree with Councilmember Klofstad to the extent of referring it to the Public Arts Commission to have a request for a proposed project and then have the budget come out of that. Despite the tires in Collins Yard, I don't see an urgency relative to the other things that are on the town's plate. So I just leave that to the normal course of business in terms of timing. In regard to the cleanup of the lake, I agree it is a jewel. I think we all agree it's a jewel. If you compare Donner Lake to any of the reservoirs in the area, there is no comparison. Donner Lake is so amazingly clear and beautiful. The reservoirs don't match it in any regard. We need to preserve it. We've been taking it for granted for all these years, and we now have to be much more active in preserving it and also providing some restoration to even a more pristine condition.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Vice Mayor Romack, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo the sentiments of my fellow council members. Thank you, Colin, for taking on this work. It's great. Donner Lake is a jewel. And I think it's super important that we, have this art installation. I thought of Councilmember Klofstad bringing me on the tour at the rec center of the, forest fire and how much art makes a difference in telling that story. So I see this as similar to that and really helping kids and adults learn. So I support going to the Arts Commission, and they're the artists, so helping things move through the process in the ways they see fit.
Thank you. Councilmember Pollock.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. I don't think I have anything other than what's been said. So I support what has been said. Thank you, Colin, very much. It's really been a pleasure watching your organization grow over the years as well. I think I was one of the first donors in the first project over on Lake Tahoe and have been there. So I see what you guys are doing and think it's great. My only other comment is going to be on location. Donner Lake is so constrained. I would love for us to find a great place over there to make this happen. I'm definitely concerned it's going to be really hard to do that, but I want to at least make a plug for somewhere near one of our waterways, whether that's, at a river type of access point or one of the lake access points, but not necessarily, obviously, the state park's not going to take it for sure, but not necessarily within West End Beach perhaps, but somewhere that is more publicly accessible. I think would be really cool, and maybe Truckee Springs might be a great type of place. That trailhead, something over there, the park or something like that might be a great location. But I would also, I asked that question on purpose. About the timing, I would only say, in slightly conflicting to Councilmember Zabriskie, I do think we should, let's get the Arts Commission on this, let's move this thing down the road, because we are trying to tell this story loud and proud, and I think it's been part of our COVID story. I mean, we've been dealing with these trash issues for a really long time, and Colin's organization has been one of the really great partners who's attempted to tackle this. And so the more we can continue to heighten the visibility of it, the more we can continue to bring people's attention to litter, to even wind detritus and all of that other stuff, I think is really important to how things blow into the lake, and continuing to tell that story and continuing to make our both visitors and residents aware of some of the issues that we face. So I would say let's keep it cranking.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll just say I also support the contract. It's an incredible opportunity to leverage some of our town funds in direct alignment with our council goals around environmental stewardship and being really good stewards for this beautiful place that we get to live and recreate in. I'm also supportive of referring it to the Art Council, and I agree with Councilmember Pallavi, moving it forward, promptly. I will say I was down at the Monterey Bay Aquarium just a few months ago with my 5-year-old, and we looked at those litter sculptures, and he said, "What are these things?" And we talked about it, and we sat down, and he was near tears. Why would people do this? Why would they put this stuff in the ocean, Mom, is what he said to me. And now he runs around all the time. He loves to collect litter. It's one of our favorite things on the trails. And he tells everyone that he sees, litter is bad for the environment. So if a 5-year-old gets it, we all should get it. We all should be working hard. And art is just such a powerful way to tell that story. So Colin, thank you for the work that you do. I am completely supportive of this. And I think we are unanimous in that. So with that, I think we're at a place where I would entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
And can I just interrupt before you do that?
Sure.
So that we make sure we are hearing the same thing, or you can include this in your motion. We're hearing preferences to work with Building 180 from an efficiency standpoint, to a call for project ideas with the Art Commission. You're looking for the Art Commission to make a recommendation on location. There's a strong preference for somewhere around one of the waterways. And then the last thing is the idea that the Art Commission will make a recommendation to bring back forward to council, and you'll have final determination.
Yes, that sounds like what I captured.
Okay, and if you didn't know, Becky Buquar, our engineering manager, has taken over the Art Commission. So Becky, is that clear for you, or would you like any further clarification? Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, it is my distinct honor to move that we authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Clean Up the Lake to complete Donner Lake monitoring program in the amount not to exceed $16,603, and all the additional comments as provided by our general manager, Jen Calloway.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it passes unanimously. Colin, thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
And Colin, thank your girlfriend for helping with tires.
I'll text her.
Okay, with that, we are going to move on to item 7.3, preparing for our future tax measure for the county. And as always, we'll start with our staff presentation and move into council questions. And Jen, you're doing this one as well.
I'm spending a lot of time in this chair tonight.
I know.
Long discussion together on this and the following item as well. Thank you, council. And then we have some special guests with us tonight that I'm sure will provide comment and are available to answer any questions. So we have Supervisor Bullock, Supervisor Hall, and County CEO Allison Lehman, as well as Carissa Brinkley back there behind Supervisor Bullock. So if you have any questions, I'm sure they're happy to answer any of the gaps that we may have. This has been a conversation that's been going on, at least with our involvement, since about April. What we are talking about is a proposed sales tax measure. It is proposed currently as a general tax, which means it needs 50% plus 1 to pass, and it is not legally restricted. It's a half-cent sales tax with estimated annual receipts of $12 million. It might sound like a lot of money. You're used to hearing sales tax generation based on the town, so this is a county-wide sales tax. It is up to the board of supervisors to place this on the ballot. So your role here tonight is to provide feedback. This is your first opportunity to have a discussion as a policy body. If you support this, if you don't support this, if you could support this given certain conditions or not. So that's what's ahead of you tonight to discuss. The County Board of Supervisors will be hearing this on August 9th for consideration. They, the county is proposing to designate the funds for emergency use. It's similar to how our Measure K operates, and that was a general tax that the town council supported, but by resolution you restricted that to council priorities, particularly housing, emergency response, climate, other priorities that come before the council. So while not legally restricted, you as a body have decided to restrict those. Future councils could change that. Future county board of supervisors could change that with a general tax. We've had 4 CEO roundtable discussions. I want to thank the county for convening that group. It was Nevada County staff, Grass Valley, Nevada City, Town of Truckee, Truckee Fire Protection District, Nevada County Consolidated Fire District, and CAL FIRE all participated in those discussions. So they were good conversations that got us to a point of where we're at. So we may not be in complete alignment, but there were some details fleshed out in those discussions, and thank you for holding those meetings. We also had a couple of conversations with just the local jurisdictions, so that's Town of Truckee, Grass Valley, and Nevada City, and independent conversations with county staff. On the Town of Truckee side, just for your information, it's myself, Robert Womack, and Dan Wilkins have been involved in all, if not all, almost all of the discussions today. Bob is also joining via Zoom, so if you have specific questions on emergency response, he's available to answer those. He's down west doing some training for us right now, but is participating in Zoom, and Dan is here as well. So the purpose of this proposed tax measure is to create a countywide community emergency services disaster preparedness fund to save lives, reduce the threat of wildfire, and improve all hazards, disaster readiness, and evacuation safety. The county and the CEO group identified guiding principles, 5 principles to prioritize projects and programs with maximum impact and likelihood to reduce risk and save lives. Focus on projects that improve evacuation safety, embed shared services as a force multiplier in every term, support neighborhood stewardship and readiness, especially of seniors and people with disabilities, and ensure accountability, transparency, and regional equity. There's 4 expenditure budget buckets that were identified by the county. Planning, preparedness, and prevention, which accounts for about 10% of the revenue collection. Mitigation is 65%, response is 20%, and recovery is 5%. And so if we spend a little bit of time on this slide, and hopefully you can see it clearly enough, the sample budget was prepared by the county. It assumes annual revenue of $12 million. And these are the examples of how that distribution would play out and what types of services would be received. So countywide disaster planning, homeless community outreach, fuels reduction, neighborhood protection grants, hazardous vegetation and hand crews, as well as communication infrastructure, and a recovery fund. Just give you some examples of what the county was looking at in terms of services, and that was discussed in the CEO roundtable. This is violating every rule of giving a presentation and putting together a slide because it has way too much information on there. But the intention was to show you kind of where the Town of Truckee, Grass Valley, and Nevada City landed and what we propose, and where we currently are with the county and their proposal. So the numbers are highlighted and underlined so you can easily see those. And we can, of course, come back to this slide or spend some time on here. So the Town of Truckee, I mentioned, we had individual jurisdiction conversations. Town of Truckee, Grass Valley, and Nevada City met and came up with a proposal that we thought was reasonable, with asking for about 17% of the collection to come directly back to the town at the town's discretion. We're happy to spend that within the 4 funding buckets, but would like that to be at the town's discretion. And that's about $2 million, a little bit over $2 million, and that 17% is based on population. In addition, we asked for 13%, about $1.6 million, be dedicated to what we define as Eastern Nevada County. I'll show you that map in a moment for your reference. We came up with that's a total of 30%. Town of Truckee generates about 30% of the county sales tax, and then the Eastern County map is about 30% of the land mass for Eastern County. So that's how we landed on those two numbers. And that's a total of 3.6 million. A couple of notes here. Just in full disclosure, I think our expectation as staff was that the 17% would coordinate with Truckee Fire Protection District on what those use of that money would be. The expectation it would likely be beyond town limits and more in the Truckee Fire Protection District limits. So just want to have clarity around that if council disagrees with that, to give that direction to staff so we can provide that to the county, although the county is here to hear that. We also asked for a binding MOU or security agreement, which would stipulate two terms. We threw out these as ideas and starting points: the 17%, this 30% allocation to Eastern County, a definition of who would sit on the TAC, the year-end review by the Citizens Oversight Committee, and that is really more of a, yes, you spent the money in the way you said you would spend the money, and an annual accounting and audit for the community in terms of transparency. And then some way to make that agreement binding. Our suggestion was a modification of the MOU may only be done by agreement of all parties. That would be the county and the town. I'm sure there's other ways to do that, but that was what we started with. The county's current proposal, and this is a little bit different than in the staff report, I had a conversation after publication, so wanted to update that. Allocation direct to the town of $750,000. That's about 6.25% of the expected receipts. I think the county has agreed that it would be based on percentage, so that number could go up or down depending on what receipts would be. An additional 13.75%, approximately 1.65 million, direct benefit to Eastern County. And I want to clarify the 750 has no approval from the TAC. That's at complete town discretion. The 13.75 would have approval from the TAC, which is the Technical Advisory Committee. The county is proposing an Eastern County Technical Advisory Committee that would be composed of city and town managers. Eastern component would have local representatives on that to make that decision. And then an additional 5% or $600,000 for indirect programs such as countywide planning or emergency services. So that's a total of 25%, $3 million. The major differences are obviously the direct allocation amount to the town, and then the 5% for countywide indirect services. I think we recognize there would be some share of indirect services. We weren't at a place of placing an actual percentage of what that would be. We wanted to have that be more of an annual conversation. And partially because a lot of what could be covered under that is something that we do ourselves here with Mr. Womack's position and our OES, because we're so separated from the rest of the county. If it comes to a conversation about grant writers or something like that, I think we'd certainly take advantage of that and want to participate and help fund those. So the map that we proposed for Eastern Western Nevada County, and fully acknowledge this is an awkward conversation to be segregating out the colony. We don't really like to think of it that way, but from a practical standpoint, our needs are a little different. Snow, a variety of issues. So you can see in this map, town of Truckee is here. Fire protection district boundaries are in yellow. And then what we propose is Eastern County, which is about a third of the land mass of the county. 305 square miles is outlined in this green section. This would be Western Nevada County, and you have Nevada City and Grass Valley here. There was a request from a council member to include the fire district map in the staff presentation, so this is here if you want to refer back to it. I would just point out that, obviously our Eastern County border is about here, so it extends beyond the fire district borders as we currently have it. We were asked to provide a work plan of potential task items that could be funded with this measure should it be placed on the ballot and approved. We worked with the Fire Protection District to come up with a pretty extensive list of projects. We provided that to you in Excel in response to some of the questions that were asked. Just a sampling of what those projects could be. Tier 1 projects, one-time costs about $7.5 million. Hazard communications, fire patrols, evacuation planning. Tier 2 projects, about $18.4 million in one-time costs for home hardening grants, and fire breaks in Donner Summit and Coldstream Canyon. There was significantly more outlined in the Excel sheet, but those were a few that we pulled out just for your reference. This needs to be updated. Before we started the meeting, we received one last public comment, so there's been 10 public comments submitted in response to this item. These are just general themes that carry through those comments. The measure should be a special tax requiring a 2/3 voter approval, thereby being legally restricted to the stated ballot language. There is some confusion with the recent passage of Measure T. That's our fire district parcel tax that goes for fire mitigation and preparedness. Why are we asking to do another quote-unquote fire tax when we just approved one? And concern that the local area expertise for our county lies up here with our fire district and town staff. So not really sure why we'd be doing a countywide tax. Again, this is the public comment. Need more specificity and details and more commitment to the town of Truckee. Need commitments in writing with a binding MOU. The tax should sunset and a lack of public engagement. So those are kind of common themes that were spread throughout the 10 public comments received. So items for you to consider in your discussion. We don't have a current agreement or terms for MOU language. There is no sunset, and it's worth pointing out that all of the town tax measures and the fire district tax measure that recently passed have had a sunset in their initial phase. The only one that has not had a sunset period is our renewal of our trails tax, Measure U. And of course that came after demonstrating that we could use the money as we committed to use it. Measure T, parcel tax, was passed in 2021, and that generates $3 to $3.5 million per year. The county did complete polling, and it did poll favorably in excess of 60% support. That was done in the fall of 2021. I believe there's some more recent polling or surveys that are out, but I don't think we have feedback back on those yet. And if passed, and this is an important item to think about, we highlighted it a lot in the staff report. Based on recent conversations you've had with your general plan, you identified a lot of areas that you want to have funding priorities for: climate initiatives, mobility. This item would get us close to our state sales tax cap. That doesn't mean there aren't other potential mechanisms for funding with your other priorities, but it would potentially take this one off the table for conversation, or you'd have a much smaller capacity. So the state sales tax cap is 9.25%. The current sales tax in Truckee is 8.25%. Measure U is going to increase by 0.25% with the recent renewal. So that'll bring us up to 8.5%. And then should this sales tax be approved by the voters, would be at 9%. So you'd have a 0.25% increment left that you could consider for future council priorities. We did do some comparison. We polled mountain communities, so Mammoth Lakes and Big Bear, and then we used our comparators for our comp and class study and looked at what their sales tax were. The only one in excess of 9.5% was City of Livermore, and actually that's a county imposed tax measure beyond the state cap. There also is a process to go through the state legislature and ask for an increase to that cap. A future council could have that conversation should they want to. That's probably a different discussion that you'd want to have as a council if you want to go down that road. So we've tried to break this out for you into your discussion. You can use these slides if they're helpful, or you can have your own discussion if not. I'll just breeze through these quickly so you can see where they go if you decide you want to go this route. The first really primary question is, do you support the proposed tax measure given where it puts you with your tax capacity and also with the terms that we currently have? If the answer to that is yes, we'd ask you for some clarification as to why you do support that and what kind of MOU you'd like to see. If the answer is no, there's similar questions. Is it because of the tax cap? Is it because there's no sunset? And this is really to give feedback to the county so they can hear your concerns if you have them and work with staff moving forward. And then the last question is if you would like staff to provide comment to the Board of Supervisors at their August 9th meeting. If you do wish that we do that, we ask that you be very specific in what you would like us to relay to the Board of Supervisors. And also, this is not on here if you'd like us to go in person or provide written comment. So I'll go back to the first question for you to answer, and if you'd like to use these to guide your discussion, I'm happy to scroll through them.
Thank you, Jen. That was wonderful. I really appreciate it. I think your slides will be using them tonight to guide through this. Before we jump into this, I do just want to, I kind of want to note, because we received some of this, I think, in comment as well, is that, you know, fires really do know no jurisdictional boundaries. Our regional collaboration is incredibly important. I think we all value that. And I'm so appreciative of all of our town staff's work to attempt to identify the details around this tax measure, and to the county for convening all of the roundtables and pulling everyone together. I'll say that there are also a lot of unknowns in this, and I think that came out pretty strongly in the questions that council asked about this in advance and in the public comment. So thank you also to my fellow council members for being so proactive and prepared in your questions. With that, we'll use the same structure we always use. We'll go to any outstanding questions that could impact your policy decisions tonight, and then public comment, and then move into deliberation. And I think that's where we'll really start to use some of your slides as well, Jen. So with that, Vice Mayor Romack, I'm going to start with you. Any outstanding questions that you have tonight?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jen, for that update. And I was curious if maybe I could ask a question of Nevada County staff, and if there was any more just clarity on the metrics behind, you know, the town receiving the 6.25% and, you know, the breakdown of the 25% going to Eastern Placer County. I don't know if you can speak to at all how that was determined, or?
I think
so. Nothing's going to Placer County. Sorry. I apologize. I work for Placer County, so when I say county, that's my automatic first thought. So Nevada County.
Yeah, well, Allison's coming up to the podium. Let me maybe try to provide some clarity as well. I believe the county identified about $1.5 million worth of work they considered to be local jurisdictional work. Some of that would be fuel mitigation or fuels reduction. So then I think they took the county the population of the town of Truckee, Grass Valley, and Nevada City, totaled that. Truckee is about 50% of that population. So 50% of the 1.4 million gets you to 750, which is 6.25% of receipts.
That's correct. Yes. Is this on? Can you hear me?
You're on.
All right, perfect. So Jen captured that really well. That is the methodology. So I'll just go briefly in terms of how we're framing this. We're really not that far apart. I think that there's agreement in terms of security, agreement whether it's an MOU, and then also the East-West equity. We have, what we're recommending is that 3 million, which is 25%, be direct and direct program services. And then instead of a 2 million direct allocation to the town, it would be a 3 million direct allocation to the TAP, which would be among your experts of your fire department, your district, as well as city staff, and other landowners and nonprofits that would contribute to the conversation, guided by plans, so guided by data that would make funding recommendations to the board of supervisors. So really what it comes down, what we see in terms of perspective, and I'll lean on Supervisor Bullock to come and expand on this, is that using a TAC to guide those funding decisions versus doing a direct allocation to the council with the council's directing those funds.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity, and I apologize for calling you the round county. I'll never do it again. I think that's my only main outstanding question at this point. There was a lot of questions asked, and I appreciate Nevada County staff for taking the time to answer the questions in advance, and for town staff as well.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Romack. Councilmember Pallavi.
Thanks, Mayor Henderson, and thank you, Jen, for the presentation. I just have a couple of quick questions, and maybe we have the answers, and I should have asked these ahead of time, but they came up afterwards, so I apologize. Do you, by any chance, have the numbers of sales tax collection by jurisdiction? So I know we are at 30%, but what is Nevada City, Grass Valley, and then the county's portion? Do we have that data?
I do have it somewhere. I can look it up. I know Grass Valley has said that they collect 40% of the county sales tax. They're in a little bit different situation in that a lot of unincorporated folks come into Grass Valley for services because that's one of the only options down there. So collection versus generation is a key distinction. And I can go back in my emails and look at what Nevada City and the rest of the county had. Tim had prepared that at one point.
Okay, so you'll get back to me, but Allison's coming up. Thanks, Allison. You should just stay close. Yeah, that's how we work up here.
No, as you see, this presentation is prepared by your staff, and we welcome the opportunity to have our staff come up and have another presentation to go a deeper dive into the details, whether it's the polling or the tax or what a potential MOU could look like. So really we'll be taking notes. I'll be bringing this back to staff, and I welcome another opportunity to come join you again.
Excellent. What's the county's sales tax rate? We saw both cities and us, but I didn't see county on our slide there. Do we have county sales tax rate? Anyone?
I believe 7.5. The county has the 0.25 for Measure A, right? The library tax.
So you got 7.5 in unincorporated Nevada County. Okay. And then maybe this is a question for you, Supervisor Bullock. How would you describe the county's current reserve strategy when it comes to budget setting and things like that? What has been we've changed our strategy pretty dramatically over the 4 years that I've been sitting up here and setting budgets. Can you speak to that a little bit at the county level? And maybe also speak to a little bit of how you've started to allocate OES funds and out of your general fund and what kind of percentages the supervisors have been looking at putting in those buckets.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So our fund balances obviously are set through the budget policy. We have had a total change, like many jurisdictions, in the way that our fund balances and our general budget and discretionary funding is impacted by wildfire. So the river fire last year is one example. We have been adding money in under resiliency strategy to put money into those funds to be prepared for it. Just to give you some scale of magnitude, our OES department used to be operational 3 to 5 times a summer. Now it's 40 to 50 times a summer. So that's, from a financial impact perspective, that's what we face in today's kind of new reality, the new normal. And so really what we're doing here, what we want to talk today about is how do we meet the demands of the new normal and how do we all shift gears. 5 years ago, if you had said, whose responsibility is it to tackle the threat of catastrophic wildfire or climate change, you wouldn't look directly at the county. You may have the county as a tertiary partner, but you wouldn't be looking at the county to fund landscape level mitigation, just like you wouldn't have looked at the town. And so as things change, we have to change with it, and I think that's at the heart of what we're talking about tonight.
All right. Do you have a specific number that you guys are now putting in reserves? I mean, I know that we are putting a specific number into a percentage of our revenues into reserves on an annual basis, specifically for emergency management.
Allison may have that number. And it depends because our fund balances and reserves are held slightly different. Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you go to the podium?
People watching at home on TV can't hear you when you talk from the audience. We're sorry.
The county currently has around $30 million in reserves, and per the board's discretion, we have been using some of our reserves as well as a PG&E and settlement funds to provide matching funds for federal and state grants. So what we found and also pulled with our voters is that opportunities to leverage dollars, and the county has been successful in drawing down funds. But as you know, because it's the same with the city, it often requires a match. So for an example, a recent, just with the winter storms, the county contributed to $1.2 million in vegetation mitigation, which matched a CAL FIRE grant. And then the larger the grant, the more the reserve. So you could see we're a small rural county, and if $30 million every time you draw down a grant requires a $4 to $5 million match, you could see how we would not be able to keep pace with the expanding need.
Thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate that. That's all my questions for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pallavi.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
I do have, so caveat, we didn't pull this data. This was provided by Grass Valley. Grass Valley generates or collects 39% of sales tax. Nevada City 8%, Truckee 33, and unincorporated 19.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Klostad, do you have any outstanding questions?
I do have a couple. We did have a very common theme in our public comments about public outreach. I understand you guys did a survey. And by the way, thank you so much, Supervisor Hall, Supervisor Bullock, Allison Lehman, for coming in and talking to us tonight. Really appreciate you being here. But I would welcome any of you to come up and speak about what type of public engagement you have done and what you intend to do.
Talk to that a little bit. So one of the challenges we face is a horse and cart issue with this, because obviously this hasn't come to the Board of Supervisors. So we haven't had the opportunity to talk collectively as an elected body and give direction to staff. So some of the confusion and misinformation related to the lack of public engagement and outreach stems from that, because staff doesn't have unified outreach necessarily at this time. So we're making estimations. We try to do that process through our partnership with the town, City of Nevada City, and Grass Valley, and my personal outreach to each of you to try and understand what you cared about, what the community cared about, and use the polling to try and get to some sort of basic framework to come back to the Board of Supervisors, then give staff some direction. It seems to me that we made a misstep in that process, and I acknowledge what you're saying, and Kat also had similar concerns about that, and I just want to acknowledge those. And so we do have some window of time in between the time that it's placed for a decision item with the board on the 9th of August to do that outreach, talk to people and understand. Yes, I understand, but there is time to receive feedback. We also have a tremendous amount of feedback that we've done with the Godview survey, so we understand, at least from the survey perspective, what the public, specifically in Eastern County, want from this type of initiative, what the rest of the county wants, where the money should go, and how we think it would be successful if it was adopted or put into play.
That's very helpful, and I understand the cart before the horse part. I get it, but we do need to satisfy our community's concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to note that we started this conversation actually back in 2019 with your former city manager. And the guidance that we received at the time was to work closely with your fire district. And we really appreciate Chief Celine's time, who met with staff on multiple occasions to look at what are the priorities, how would this complement Measure T dollars and other projects that are happening regionally. And he was instrumental in terms of what we were calling the CEO roundtable. The roundtable, we were very intentional in terms of making sure that we had full engagement from the town and key staff from the town, as well as nonprofits, both on the east and the west side. But also having the expertise of our fire service providers, including CAL FIRE. So the work that came out of that really represents that Jen captured it really well in terms of the framework of what this measure would look like and what we'll be recommending to the Board of Supervisors.
I appreciate that and agree. It was a very creative list of things and a full understanding of what fire resilience really means. So I do really appreciate that. I still have a couple more questions. Since you mentioned Measure T, that of course was a parcel tax that had a sunset. This being a sales tax with no sunset, why such a big difference? Why did you decide to go that direction?
Yeah, we and I'll use the exhibit developed by the town of Truckee and Truckee Fire Protection District in the county. There's $82 million worth of priority on this piece. We don't see 5 years necessarily completing all of this work, and this is aspirational in nature, right? This is what everybody wants to do. If we can somehow do it, there's $82 million worth of mitigation and work to combat catastrophic wildfire. In the government timeline, as we all know, a year or two to get a program off the ground, a year of solid funding in the middle of that, and then on a 5-year sunset, we would be right in the middle of a renewal campaign or a transition. We just don't think there's enough time to necessarily complete all the work that we've described and that our community has described in Eastern County with a 5-year sunset. Now, recognizing that, can we work together to get to some acceptable level that offers the council some flexibility in bringing other initiatives in the future? I would think so. I think that that's probably a really great thing to work toward.
I'm happy to answer the question regarding assessment versus a general sales tax. In 2019, we did go out to a poll on a parcel, and then again, we polled for sales taxes twice in this past year. And we're really listening to the voters. And what we heard is that an assessment would be more challenging and was not supported by the voters, but its sales tax overwhelmingly was. And I believe at the recent polls with Truckee, and we're happy to share this information with your staff, was recently polling at 61-62%.
Okay, thank you.
And with the general sales tax versus special tax would be that emergency service, as you know, is broad. And I think when you look at the FEMA buckets, starting with planning and then mitigation and response and recovery, working with our council, it would meet the merits and the standards of a general tax.
Okay, I hadn't thought about that, so thank you. One last question. Based on the structure that the county is recommending, that we have that roughly $3 million and we have a TAC that's determining how it's going to be spent, does that then, can you just clarify to me how that is presented to the Board of Supervisors, and do they have the final say, and can they make changes in that recommendation?
So similar to your presentations tonight, we will be providing staff recommendations and then seeking policy feedback and direction from the Board of Supervisors. So yes, of course, the Board of Supervisors could provide policy direction different than what staff is recommending. We're doing our best to have listening sessions both from our town and city partners and our stakeholders. The board was very clear at their board workshop that this is a county priority, and they charge staff to come back with solutions. And so this is the recommendations will be in alignment with the policy direction that we received at their workshop in January, as well as the feedback that we've received from stakeholders.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes. Are the county representatives planning to make public comments right now, or are we getting your feedback with our questions?
I'd like to make public comment, just general public comment.
Okay. If we can, once the Supervisor Bullock has made his comments, can we have an opportunity to do follow-up questions?
I mean, I think we'll move right into deliberation, and if you have additional questions that come out during that, we can discuss them.
Okay. So this is for either of the county representatives. What was the polling response on a parcel tax? You mentioned a percentage for a sales tax being around 60%. What was it on a parcel tax?
Yeah, I'll definitely get back to you on that. It was less than 60%, and the polling data was in 2019, and we're happy to get you that information.
Let me go to town staff for just a second. If we have this MOU or a security agreement, to whom in the eastern county does the money go? Is it the town and the fire district, the town, to whom?
I think that's up for council discussion. Our proposal was it would come directly to the town. We also would think that we would enter an agreement with the fire district, that we would collaborate them and agree with them on how to spend the money in 10 years from now. Could be a different council, could be different staff, you never know. We want to memorialize that.
Okay. I assume the state and the federal government are excluded as potential recipients, but are there other potential recipients besides the town and the fire district that might come up for discussion?
Yeah, to the extent that this money would be used to match with grant funding, it could receive state or federal grant money. But other than that, I mean, maybe homeowners or home hardening grants.
Okay. Is the town being asked to take a position? Has the county asked us to take a position, or is this something we're doing on our own initiative?
Well, the county engaged with us, and we appreciate that in the conversations. Their purpose is to try to gain feedback from the town on what we think we could support. I don't know that support or lack of support would change the decision of the county to move this forward, but we felt as staff it was an opportunity, and you should have an opportunity to discuss it as a council and provide feedback.
So it's more feedback than taking a position.
we would come back to you if this is placed on the ballot and ask if you want to take an official position.
In listing the various comments, there was also a comment that we should be looking at a higher percentage going to the eastern side because of our higher summer population. Was that one of the comments?
We have received comments that way in feedback to that sense. Bob may want to weigh in on this. An additional point of reference is that FEMA bases recovery on estimated value, and we have about 30% of the estimated value, property value on the side of the county.
Okay.
Bob just popped on if you'd like to add anything.
Is that right, Bob?
I think Jen captured it pretty succinctly. I mean, FEMA, part of the reason that FEMA does this is it takes it out of all the other issues and it just looks at property values. And then they add a factor in for loss of life. It's not a fun calculation, but it's the way they do it.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then, do we know what the thoughts are of the other fire districts in the county? Do we have any feedback from them? I assume they're for the tax, and it would be in the details where there might be different positions. Can the county answer that?
So we have not received formal position from any of our fire districts, and we have received feedback from the fire districts that has ranged from support in terms of reducing fuel load to the same concerns that I'm hearing from council in terms of competing for future assessments or taxes.
Okay. Are there any response from the smaller fire districts or even the consolidated fire district about wanting to use these funds simply to buy newer equipment, expand their buildings, increase their employment?
Not from Consolidated. Consolidated was a strong focus in terms of fuel reduction, but we have received that feedback in terms of fire station and personnel from the city of Grass Valley.
Okay. And then, I don't know if this is for town or the staff, just who exactly would be on the eastern side's TAC? Or is this all one big TAC we're talking about, or would there be an eastern TAC that just...
There would be an eastern TAC that would make independent recommendations to the County Board of Supervisors that align with the plans that are created by your emergency service staff, and that'd be separate from the Western County staff. In terms of who sits on that, our recommendation, and this is something that we continue to work with your staff on, and I believe that we're in alignment, we definitely would want OES, your fire district, town personnel, public works with roadside vegetation, but we'd also recommend of having your health and human service lead providers because there is a component of unpermitted fires due to illegal camping, and so we would recommend, and also your land stewards as well. What we found that in Eastern County that you have very proactive nonprofits, and we want to build on the success that we've done in the last year with the CARES Act funding and the ARPA funding and the recreation funding that has been provided by the county to Eastern County to really look at those partnerships and have Eastern County coordinate and collaborate and make those recommendations as a contingent.
Okay. And can you explain to me, just based on all the staff interactions and discussions, how you arrived at an indefinite period rather than a sunset provision? I mean, I heard Supervisor Bullock talk about 5 years being too short a time period, but...
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We're leaning on our fire experts with fuel reduction, and as you know, when you have shaded fuel breaks, there's maintenance involved. This isn't a one-time. We also look at, and your point to the exhibit over at the Recreation Center, I agree with you that this is a legacy issue that is going to take time and resources just to catch up and then keep pace. So we feel that it would be a disservice to have these fuel breaks and then in 5 years they grow back and there aren't the resources to maintain it. However, we are listening to our stakeholders, and the feedback that we're receiving on the sunset is something that we definitely want to go back and continue to work with you and staff and other stakeholders to explore the pros and cons of that.
Was there any particular financial plan that looked at how much would be expended on an annual basis to do the catch up on this legacy problem, and then how much would be required just to do maintenance once we had pretty much caught up?
Yeah, so our process was with our budget analyst, along with our assistant CEO, met with our cities, the town, and some of our fire partners to look at the unmet needs. And as you saw in the exhibit, I believe the town was $31 million of unmet needs, with, I think, is it 18 million in terms of fuel reduction projects?
That sounds about right.
And so what I can tell you is that just with the West Ponderosa project in Western County, we're looking at seeking $1 million just for the maintenance of an existing fuel break. But definitely more analysis could be done, and we could bring that back to you.
One of the concepts is with equity banking. So there's a concept whereby you're generating a higher level of funding for some of these projects, and smaller projects through grant funded, this kind of trickle effect from grant funding is one way to get the problem solved incrementally. There's something different if each, the town, for example, could bank their equity over a number of years to do large landscape level projects. And that's kind of the counterpoint to what you're just describing, getting in front of it and doing the maintenance on this past work, but also it works in reverse as well, because there's this revenue stream that comes forward, really allowing us to do some really big, innovative and landscape level projects that you don't typically see with just trickle down kind of grant funding that we get typically.
Well, isn't that one of the big driving forces? It's doing this landscape level fuel reduction, getting on it right away.
Yeah, and that's correct. And the town of Truckee, through the Eastern County TAC, would have the ability to compound and leverage those funds across the projects that we see fit, basically outlined on this priority exhibit that we've all come together to agree that we need to do.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, I have, I think, one more too, when you have a second. I don't mean to interrupt you, I just want to...
Totally fine, I'm going to go over to you. I'm going to come back to me for 2 questions as well.
Okay.
You go first, I'm sure.
Okay. So I just want to clarify something from Councilmember Zabrisky's line of questioning, because I think there might be some misunderstanding. So Councilmember Zabrisky asked a few questions that I think relate back to Jen's sort of, hey, here's what the town's asked for, here's what the county's offered. And it pertained to some TAC membership, it pertained to some types of different things. Just for a point of clarification, what CAO Lehman told us is sort of opinion at this point. There is no, I just want to be clear that we are all clear about that, okay? Because her answer was very clear and very precise and very accepting of what I think we would like, but we haven't gotten there, and that's sort of the point. So we're clear on that one?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good, bring us all into alignment. Thank you. So I have just two questions. How many people were polled in the most recent survey, and what was the breakdown of that polling by jurisdiction within the county?
Yeah, I sat through a couple Godby presentations, but I can't recite it off the top of my head. We do have the hard figures here. In the Eastern County, representative of the population was done linearly, so if our Eastern County population.
So just to clarify, Mayor Henderson, are you asking about the 2021 polling?
The recent polling?
I'm asking about whatever the most recent polling, which I understood from some of the answers we got was probably 2021. But if that's incorrect, if you could just kind of clarify the polling that has been done.
I believe it was 200 survey responses.
Across the entire county?
No, it's close to 1,000 survey responses. And I have the November 2022 data. And Truckee breakout was 100 at 62%, a definitely yes and probably yes. And we used, similar to the city, we use a professional pollster that goes out and makes sure that it's scientifically valid in terms of giving us feedback.
And that was this past November, you said?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then my other question is related to the TAC. Why are we proposing using a TAC to provide recommendations to the Board of Supervisors to then make decisions about the use of funds, as opposed to it going directly to the town with an MOU with the fire district to make those decisions? I can understand, for transparency and accountability, but the town can also, submit a plan and report for transparency and accountability. So I sort of feel like we're adding this layer, and I don't really understand why.
Well, if it is a county tax, then ultimately the supervisors are responsible for answering to the voters. So that's why the final decision would rest with the supervisors. The concept of a TAC and separating them entirely for Eastern County was a solution that I think we discussed between the county and the town to really provide local level control in its highest form in making that recommendation. So ultimately, if it's a county tax, and you'll see that reflected in the equity pieces as well, the county needs some control over where that money goes, what buckets it's used for, how it's reported out, all the transparency related to that decision-making body.
Thank you, Supervisor Bullock.
And I would just add, I think your staff answered that question when they put the map up on the screen, is that the footprint of what we're considering as Eastern County extends beyond the town boundaries. And I also want to emphasize the strong nonprofit land stewards that you have in Eastern County. So as the board dynamics change, the town dynamics change, whether it's leadership or positions, we want to make sure that's not lost in terms of having a strong voice in Eastern County of all of our partners.
Okay. We're good with questions on this side and on this side? Okay, wonderful. So with that, we are going to open for public comment on this item. Anyone who wants to make a public comment on 7.3 can step right up to the podium. And of course, you have 3 minutes, and state your name for the record, please. And I know we have a few folks here, so if you're going to make public comment, go ahead and queue right up. Thank you.
Well done, and you can stop here if you hear from Patrick. So thank you the staff report was great. A lot of information. Thank you to the council for considering this and taking the time to go through all this with us. I'm here to listen to you because you're constituents in Nevada County, and I'm here for that reason. I'm also here to listen to you as leaders for Truckee, and I value that, and I know that we have a great relationship on many other levels. So I wanted to put that out there first and foremost. We kind of talked a little bit about the new normal, and I think this is the county's way of answering that call. It's not perfect, and I think we're close, but I may not be there entirely. I talked a little bit about our OES and the demands placed on the county that are new, different, and unusual in the last 5 years, and I think all of us can recognize that with the fires we've had and the threats, particularly last summer with fire to the south and fire to the north, and then the river fire in Nevada County. I'm not sure the total starts this year, but we've already had a few fires that have consumed structures. We just want to meet our responsibility to the community in East County and West County, and as you all know, my biggest kind of directive since I've been in office is unifying the county and bringing county support and services to Eastern County, commensurate with the taxes that we pay and the contributions we make to the county economy. So that's why I support it. When I first talked to each of you and I talked to staff, I needed 2 items to be supported. One of them was a security instrument that outlined the Eastern counties, the revenue that came out of Eastern County to come back in the form of service. I needed that security instrument. The other piece that I wanted was I wanted the fire community and the fire service, Bill Salim and others, to tell me that they supported that they could use it, that they would find value in that, and that they could work with the town as a partner to use those resources. The first one, I don't know if we're necessarily there yet. We've talked about an MOU, but the framework that outlines that to me looks like a term sheet. It would go in front of the Board of Supervisors that you could see in visible written format some of the comments that we've received obviously says get it in writing, and I agree with you on that. So I just want to let you know, and I've talked to this and been very vocal about this, those are the two things I need: a security instrument, and I need the fire service to convince me and make everybody get on the same page when it comes to the value of this work. And we're not done, and I think that this exhibit that talks about the town's needs illustrates that for me. I do think there's equity. It's not perfect, but I do think there's equity across Eastern County and Western County with the numbers that Allison outlined. I'm happy to go over those again. The security instrument, obviously, would be an MOU. We want to bring the term sheet forward so people can read it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the players in Eastern County. It's a little unique because we are, we stand on our own. We do a lot of things to help ourselves. We have the town of Truckee, Nevada County. Oh, I'm out of time. Okay. And we have the Fire Protection District. We're all headed in the same direction. So using that money and who gets the exact dollar where that money is spent, I'm convinced will go to the right cause. And I also want to point out that our CARES Act, our ARPA funding, our COVID response, and our recreation are all opportunities that we've showed that we can work together, that we trust each other. There's another opportunity to move forward and work together on something.
Thank you, Supervisor Bullock. Mr. Flora.
Good evening, Mayor Henderson, Council, Patrick Flora, Contractors Association of Truckee, Tahoe. I believe you all received our written comments, so I won't go back through all of those with you. I would just like to say that obviously CAT is fully supportive of wildfire mitigation and public safety measures as a general principle. I would, with all due respect, Supervisor Bullock's 2-week time frame, based on my experience in the public realm, is probably pretty ambitious to have a robust public discussion on a county-wide basis. And regarding the sunset, and maybe the town attorney can help answer this question for you, I could be wrong, but I don't believe it's an either-or, either 5 years or indefinite as the two choices. So there might be some room for discussion on that topic. With that said, I know you've received comments from several former supervisors, several former mayors. Glad to see that some of the old dogs are still up and at it. Unfortunately, I mean, I would encourage the council and the county to have a robust public engagement process before you take an up or down vote on this ballot. I mean, unfortunately for us, as it stands now, as a general tax measure with no sunset clause, we would not be able to support it. But that would certainly be open for discussion, and we would welcome the opportunity to be part of that discussion. So, minute 26. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flora.
Just for clarification, you can have any sunset period you want. I think the council's aware of that.
Thank you, Jen. Supervisor Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, and thank you for a robust discussion. Very helpful to hear what your concerns are. I'm District 1 supervisor, so I have Nevada City, the entire city in my district, as well as a great deal of county property. So can't really compare it with the large size and number of great actions that Truckee has taken, but a little bit similar in terms of working together with the city. I just wanted to make a couple of points that might be helpful. First of all, in the city, in the state and national advocacy that I'm spending a lot of time on for our county, although this is a great big city here in Nevada County, we are a small county. In every metric, we are considered a small county. And what funders and folks want from us is to work together. They don't want to hear about squabbles between cities and county. We have taken that to heart and been incredibly collaborative, trying to be, our goal is always to make a win-win situation for our cities and for the county. And the more we do that, the more trust we build, and the more able we do that. The more able we are to do that. So my plea here is that we do look at this as a regional issue. You already know that wildfires, mega wildfires, are very different today than they were 5 or 10 years ago. Just last week, I sat with a friend who was away from her home while her family was being evacuated from Mariposa County with the Oak Fire. As we sat there together, It started at 60 acres, a half an hour later it was 600 acres, half an hour later it was 1,200 acres. Any fire that starts in any part of this county is going to be moving fast. Towns and cities are no longer safe, and any kind of the major work to do major structural change in the forest is going to be to protect the biggest population centers, and any of the work obviously that the fire agencies do is also going to be to protect the single houses and the big population centers. So my argument is that we really are completely aligned in our needs in terms of stopping the mega wildfires so that we protect homes in the county, but homes in the city are going to be the top priority. I just want to make a statement also. Oh, in terms of the sunset, that is a tricky one, and we are open to conversation about that. Personally, my personal opinion, and I haven't even had a chance to share this with the rest of the board, is that we're looking at 2035 climate goals and 2050 net zero. And that's only 13 years away for that first set of goals. We have a lot of work to do. We know that starting something today is not going to finish until 3 or 4 years from now, and then the constant change, the constant upkeep and mitigation that's required. I do know, if I can keep going for another few seconds.
Yeah.
So on the national scene, we are hearing that there will be a big wildfire funding bill coming down potentially this year as Congress is preparing for the big changes that might happen in the election. But we also know that that funding, once there's a big slug, there may not be anything for a while. We are still fighting all the other counties and states when it comes to major funding in an ongoing way for wildfire. They just don't see that. Big cities and other parts of the country just don't see that that is as big a threat as they see the threats in their own counties and states. And so the need for an ongoing systemic funding to me means that sunset needs to be quite long, or there needs to be none to acknowledge the extent of the threat that we really have here. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Supervisor Hall. Would anyone else like to make a public comment on this agenda item tonight? Seeing none, we will close public comment, and we are just about at 7 o'clock, so I am going to call a 10-minute recess. We'll come back at 7:10 and move into deliberation. Thank you.
I came here to simply not. I mean, the funny thing is, like, I'm a protester. So, like, I know she wasn't doing it, but I also knew why she wasn't doing it. Ruth didn't do it. Fine. And I get it. Cool. But,
Oh.
so he's gonna, I'm just gonna try to figure it out.
Okay, cool.
Just show you what it was telling me. If you can hear him, I'll say it. I can get on YouTube.
Do we have water?
Oh, yeah.
We should have some cups.
There's glasses in the back.
Okay, we have cups and then we have a water machine.
They're already poured in that.
Thanks, Chris. I knew you'd figure that out. It's like, I don't know. I will. Oh. Skin just makes my head turn so good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
I keep feeling like I'm like getting stronger doing like my workouts and stuff, but then like some things I think like, no, I really should just spend more time stretching.
I was really proud of myself because I did the triathlon with 0 training.
How'd it go?
I got 109, but I finished.
That's important.
Yeah.
Who else on the town did it?
Caitlin did the swim and the bike ride, and then her husband ran for her. And then Allison and Janelle, and then Stephen was going to be their third, but he got COVID, so then they pulled in somebody random, and they got second in the relay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someday. I don't know.
Yes.
I just like the last time I trained, because I did like a couple of like long running races, and like the training commitment was like minutes a week at 5 in the morning, running for 3 hours, like you know, it was like multiple days a week. Like, why? I mean, I love being outside and I love like running, but I did it.
Yeah.
And then I totally stopped running for like a year now. I can't run at all. I think I just needed a break and switch it up. Look at on my mountain bike and see how that goes.
Thank you.
The diet. I forgot for a moment.
Wasn't me, but someone's got This one, you give me your chocolate.
I know Judy's really running low on candy. I went and stole some from building, but they were suckers, which I ate one, and then I was like, this is not a very professional looking candy. But I'm committed now. There's nowhere I can put it.
Speaking of, I should probably went to the bottom. You what? Same. Oh, every time. But I was hungry, so I just have to. Seriously. Well, I just ate salad this time. I just had was already messed up before I came here, so I don't know what you're weird today, but I'm trying to think what I ate last night. I ate gluten-free pasta with spaghetti sauce. Spaghetti sauce.
Yeah. Candy time? What? Candy time? We need to bring that. Oh, there must be water. Yeah.
Just in a different position. Like, we're managed so much better fiscally because of one more? You know, I'll eat it.
Just general interest?
Well, I'm just graduating high school. I'm gonna be a business major, so I just wanted to see what's going on in the town. It's interesting.
Yeah, what you expected?
It's exactly right. So it's just weird. I mean, it's interesting to see how the area car works. Very interesting.
Your presentation was right on spot. You should be presenting it on the night.
What do I want?
I always wear puffy.
Good. Same used to be. Same exact, same color.
I also have an orange because the orange is very hard to read.
Oh, smart. Yeah. I don't have any stickers on mine yet. I like to sticker so that way it's like very always off, so obvious. So yeah. Oh, is that my
We are friends for a wedding. They all have like weddings that have dippers. Dippers. Mom.
Oh, that's awesome. That is such But adorable.
Yeah, I love it.
And you'll never lose it.
Yeah.
You'll always use it. Yeah.
It would be weird for people to steal it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I separated mine, I remember having to write up for mine. I think that's one of those funny things about some stuff you'll keep it forever and other things you'll and especially because you guys and Mom's like, you have to do one. Well, because people just want to buy you something that you want that you don't want.
Like, what are we at 17 years?
That doesn't happen.
Let's do what she's doing. Like, she's on her own little
Oh, that's cute.
You and I are supposed to be smart.
And matching koozies. Oh, well, there you go. Drinking beer instead of water. Totally. We're always ready. Yeah. My sister got a shirt with Mom. She's kind of like that also.
We need Judy to come back.
Oh my gosh,
You're
seriously.
dangerously loud.
I'm sure there's more downstairs. We can raid Becky's.
Oh, yeah. Becky will share.
Ooh, that's a nice lollipop.
That's probably one of the ones that come out of the pinata.
Oh yeah, that's totally what it is.
Living the dream? Mm-hmm. Living the dream.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So since Judy's not here, what's the policy on former council members going into the candy?
You bet. I think it's absolutely legal.
That's an okay.
Yeah,
That's,
go big.
It's not
It's a
violation.
lifetime benefit.
Yeah. You've earned it. We don't do lifetime health benefits, but lifetime fun-sized Snickers.
Or health benefits at all, which is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lifetime benefit.
This is not going to increase the cost of
And
development.
water if you like. Yeah. Total fair game.
Really? You're going to throw that bill in front of me? I'm just not going to react.
Just waving the red flag in front of the bull.
Not going to do it.
Like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I sent the long diatribe. But I'll just take this opportunity since I have it.
Jen, to answer your question, I would say complete inability to read the room or the community. I'm going to kick off my campaign by taking a stand.
But only on what's important to you. Welcome to my work. I just chuckled. I'm feeling better.
Okay, so we are going to come back for deliberation on 7.3 related to the proposed county tax measure. And we're going to start with a really simple question before we move into deliberation. And it's the question that Jen has up on the slide. So is the council supportive of the proposed tax measure as it currently stands? And I just want to hear a yes or a no from each of my fellow council members. We'll then move into deliberation, and understanding that yes or no will help guide that deliberation. So I'm putting you all on the spot a little bit. With that, Councilmember Pallavi, are you supportive of the proposed tax measure as it currently stands?
No.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Romack? Yep. Councilmember Klosted?
No, not as it currently stands.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
I think it's a bit of an unfair question.
But I am going to use my mayoral prerogative to force you into it because we will come to deliberation.
We're going to talk about it.
We are going to talk about it in depth.
Okay, no.
Wait, Jen, don't I get to weigh in? But to guide deliberation. Okay, so I'm just going to say, just for the record, I also am not supportive of it as it currently stands. So with that, Jen, you have some guiding questions for us if the council is not supportive of the tax measure as it stands, which I think could be helpful in our conversation this evening. One of the points you had, would we be supportive if it had a sunset date? Whatever that sunset date is, and we can talk about any preferences we might have for that. If we're not supportive, is it because of the potential tax cap limitations, which Jen talked about in the presentation? We didn't really talk about in any of our questions. But of course, this would get us very close to the 9.25% cap on our sales tax without having to go through the state legislature. Would we be supportive if there was a mechanism to pass some of the revenue back to the town, which is then controlled by the town? And any other conditions or circumstances that you want to deliberate on this evening? So with that, I am happy for each of you to weigh in on these specific items. And of course, if there's anything else that you want to deliberate on. Vice Mayor Romack, I started with you in questions. I'll start with you in deliberation as well, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And first up, I wanted to say thank you to Allison, all your staff in Nevada County for all the hard work you've put into this. I'm sure it's been a lot. And to the staff at the town as well for working on this. And then Supervisors Hall and Bullock for both being here tonight. We really appreciate that. You're listening to constituents, you're listening to town council, so that really goes a long way. And you all kind of talked about it, of that working together as a county, and this shows that you are here and you do want to listen. It's not just, we're going to do one thing on one side and not worry about the rest. So just really appreciate and want to say thank you for that. And then I'll also say, we all just said no, but I think if the question would have been, do you all support wildfire mitigation measures and emergency preparedness and all of the other goals of this, we would have all said yes. And so I think that's pretty obvious, but just putting it out there too. I think everybody in this room understands how important that is. It's just, how do we get there? Is this the best way to do it? And so I appreciate kind of looking at some of these, and I think all of these different mechanisms that you mentioned, Mayor, a sunset date, I definitely would be interested in seeing that, as Jen pointed out in her presentation, all of the tax measures we've done here in town have a sunset date, except our most recent one, and that is because we already proved to the voters that we were able to deliver on what we promised. So I think a sunset date is important. I will say, though, I do have concerns. The next question on here is related to tax cap limitations. This would limit our ability in the town to do other sales tax measures. As we've talked about the general plan, there's a lot of things that are of importance to our community. And so this does restrict it. And with this point, I'll say something else that Supervisor Bullock, you mentioned how, ultimately this goes back to the Board of Supervisors, if the TAC recommended something, because you have to answer to the voters, which I completely understand. And I think this is where I see why this is tricky, is because ultimately the Board of Supervisors would have the control. And I will say, the citizens of Truckee only have one vote, one supervisor. So ultimately the citizens could vote for one supervisor, where the citizens of Truckee vote for all 5 of us. And so I see that being a big difference in when we go for town sales tax measures. That way, if we're not doing what we said we did, or things aren't going the way, people can vote us all out, but the citizens of Truckee would have a different ability to do that. So that's just one thing that goes into all of this that won't change whether we change all these mechanisms. I would say, I definitely would like to see a mechanism, a security instrument or MOU that would ensure revenue would come back to the town, be controlled by town council in consultation with the fire district.
I think, we've done a lot. Big thanks to Bob Womack and his team and everyone else. So we'd want to make sure that, we could do everything in coordination with those efforts and not be, doing too much in one area and not enough in another area. So I think ultimately those are, kind of the big sticking points. So I would say I would definitely love to have town staff and county continue to work through some of this. But I'm not going to say that if we work all of those out, I would definitely support it. I think also I want to put that out there that we would still have to hear more and truly understand what it all means. I will stop there.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Romack. Very clear. I appreciate that. Councilmember Pallavi.
Thanks, Mayor Henderson, and I think I support a lot of what Vice Mayor Romack also reiterated. And first and foremost, I don't want any of my comments to be taken, personally, but by the county. I really appreciate the relationship that we have had the pleasure of creating over the past 4 years, especially through COVID, especially during my term as mayor and Mayor Klostad's term, and especially as Supervisor Bullock has really stepped into a really fantastic leadership role for both the county and for our district. So I just want to make sure that we're really clear on that, because we are doing awesome stuff together. Supervisor Bullock and I also have had some very energetic conversations about this topic, and I've appreciated those. And I think that at this one, we might just agree to disagree as to how we move this forward. And supervisors have a different responsibility to the county as a whole than we do to our constituents, and that's really very clear to me. I'm speaking tonight really reflecting on those needs of our constituents here in Truckee, and the feedback that I've gotten both personally through public comment and in other conversations since our agenda was published. We've used all 3 revenue increase tactics in the past 4 years. We have done a transit occupancy tax, we've done a parcel tax, and we've done a sales tax in 3 years and 3 ballot measures. And I would say our community is kind of at the end of the line as far as that goes. I've heard, the cost of living is now through the roof. And really, the cost of housing, the cost of living, the cost of gas, whatever it is, our costs are simply increasing, and we live in a higher cost of living district. And what we will be doing is adding more to the cost of living here. That is very clear. Another half cent matters. And as we heard, that's almost $3 million a year. Granted, it's both from our visitor and our local population. So, what does that say to me? It weighs heavily on our constituents. It weighs heavily on, the way that I would support something like this. I absolutely cannot support a county tax measure sales tax measure in perpetuity. I also have a hard time with a county sales tax measure that all but caps our ability to increase our own revenues. And at this point, I can absolutely not I cannot support something that doesn't have a security instrument that contains provisions to ensure that a minimum of that 25% of the sales tax of the county full sales tax revenue finds its way back to the eastern side of the county, not necessarily to the town of Truckee. And I'm super, super, super open to that. I understand our regional issues, and I'm very supportive of making sure that our region is healthy and safe and prepared more than anything. I think our emergency services are also in need, but again, there's a reason why Truckee became Truckee, and there's a reason why we've created the budget that we have, and there's a reason why we've created the reserves that we've created, and there's a reason that we're putting so many of the goals in our climate adaptation plan and in our general plan that we are, and it is to help with these types of issues. So is there something that gets me to support is sort of the question, and to me right now that answer is sort of a hard no. with that being said, I'm not opposed to using our own sales tax revenues to remit back to the county at some point, right? Those are things, when there are county programs and county needs, I can be very supportive of saying, yeah, we'd love to kick in $1 million to help do X or help do Y. And that allows us to control our own destiny, in addition to supplanting and increasing the effectiveness of county programs. The sales tax, the general sales tax, is just really troubling for so many reasons, not the least of which include the fact that we as elected officials have short terms, we have short memories, and we have lots of spending priorities. And that's as simple as it gets. And without a security instrument, as Supervisor Bullock coined, there's no way I get behind this. If we do get to a security instrument and it's supportive of all of the goals that we've outlined from the beginning, I can be much more supportive. And it's no knock to our staff or anybody's staff or any of the elected officials in the room. But yeah, these conversations have been going on since April. We have been getting briefings from our town manager. We have had opportunities to interact with our supervisor, and I believe he's dedicated a lot of his personal time to meeting with all of us individually. These are not new talking points that I'm bringing up tonight. These are very common. I've been very consistent. And so for us to get to this point and for it to get to a supervisor's agenda on August 9th, it feels rushed. It feels not really community supported. In that same vein, I absolutely understand the speed, the haste, and the budget issues that our county is facing. I get it, and I don't want to discount those, but I have a tough time in representing Truckee's constituency and thinking that this is a good idea for Truckee and for the region surrounding us. So I will stop there. In answering some of these questions, all of them need to be satisfied in order for me to get on board. And when we're talking about odd number years, if you want to talk about a sunset date, 6 years, 8 years, make it even so at least it's on an election schedule and we're not doing special elections and costing the taxpayers more dollars. Tax cap limitations, absolutely, that's my biggest concern. And I want to be clear, I guess I am running again, should I be lucky enough to serve another term, I would be supportive of some type of quarter, half, or whatever cent sales tax that we put on the ballot for some of these purposes. That has a very specific statute that says we're going to remit X millions of dollars back to the county to bolster their Office of Emergency Services. I actually think in a special tax, we would actually pass that here if our constituency knew what we were doing with the money and why we were doing it. I think we'd have better support for something like that, and then we control it and we're not relinquishing a general sales tax to the county. I don't know if you want me to keep asking some of these questions, but I think my opinion is clear on this one, but happy to clarify anything else. Thank you.
You've been pretty
good.
Thank you. Okay, let me turn it over to Councilmember Clifton.
Okay, I think most of this has already been said, so I had a lot written here that I wanted to get out, but I think I'm gonna be duplicating a lot of what's already come forward. But I do primarily want to make it 100% clear that I support the purpose and the guiding principles of this 100%. I'm looking through that list of the sample budget, which also was really exciting to me because it had a lot of great ideas that were just out of the box thinking and showed a deep understanding of the complexity of what it takes to build wildfire resilience. And so I wouldn't take a single thing off that list. I think it's an excellent list. It's well thought out. It's thorough, the no sunset. That's really the biggest hurdle for me. I feel like we have to prove to our voters our ability to meet their expectations with their tax dollars. And I think we have a great opportunity to do that if we could just put a sunset on this and then renew it based on what our accomplishments were and what we still had yet to do. So that to me is the first hurdle. It sounds like the county is willing to consider that, and I hope so, because I think we could find great common ground on all of the other things. I am also very concerned about the tax cap limitations, but for me, again, if it goes back to a sunset, then that's a little bit easier for me to accept, because again, once we're at that sunset point, we can reevaluate whether it really still needs to be a full half cent or if it could be something less. So then that becomes less of an issue for me. And I'm absolutely in agreement. I don't feel like these monies need to be spent in the town boundaries, but they do need to be spent in protection of the source of income, which is Eastern County. And so I would want to make sure that there is some sort of ability for us to influence those projects and the use of those funds. And then I think the only other thing, which I assume would be part of it, is I would want to have some sort of annual reporting for our community to be able to consume and understand the successes that have been reached with their tax dollars, so that they could support a renewal of it in the future. So,
Thank you very much. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes, I think we're all in agreement that the climate change is proving to be a greater and greater problem, posing greater and greater catastrophic fires and other extreme climate events, is reflected in the county's recent report on the Climate Adaptation and Mobility Plan. That same plan shows that the effects of climate change will be more extreme in terms of wildfires on the west side than the east side. I think that's largely due to the kind of vegetation that predominates over there. All that scrub and oak woodland is much more flammable and is denser. All of that said, it's an extreme threat up here. It's an extreme threat throughout the county, and we're, as the supervisors have mentioned, we're a small county. We have a small tax base, and yet we have this tremendous acreage of wild land, which is turning our budgets upside down. We really need state and federal support, and I really appreciate the effort that the county staff and the representatives, elected representatives, have made to try and do as much as we can at the county level. So we need to work together to solve this as we've been trying to do. But then I agree with my council members also on their concerns. For me, a sales tax is the most regressive way to tax our constituents. A general tax gives us no assurance that a future Board of Supervisors isn't going to discover a new need that they consider greater than fire prevention, fuel reduction, those sorts of things. So we have a general tax, and then there's no sunset. I share my other council members' feelings about a sunset provision, and I felt that way on the earlier ballot measures this town has addressed. I think voters need to be required to review the taxes they've imposed just across the board, and it's always just a question of how long is the term going to be before you come back and revisit it. And then while we're asked in aid if we're supportive of the tax measure, we don't know exactly what the tax measure is. As Supervisor Bullock said, he's been working on a security agreement, some kind of binding agreement that would establish the terms that are of interest to us on the eastern side, yet we don't have it yet. So it's those four things that create problems for me, and I would say most of all, along with my other council members, it's the lack of a sunset. The next thing is, for me, is it having to be a general tax instead of a special tax. I think it should be a special tax. And then we don't have any certainty of terms, and I think it should be a property assessment rather than a sales tax. This kind of use of funds typically has to do with protecting property values, and in that sense, it ought to be a property assessment.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Okay, I will sort of reiterate a few things. I think we all understand the needs of the county. We all understand that fires know no boundaries. We all value our regional collaboration. And I think this dialogue is so important because we also have to be able to speak up for ourselves and our constituents and to really honor what we believe is in the best interest of our constituents. And to Councilmember Pollivy's earlier point, any points of disagreement that we have, we don't disagree in our broad goals around fire protection and mitigation. And perhaps we only disagree in the process for how we actually achieve those goals. And that's okay. That's reflective of the constituents that we serve, right? So for me, I don't support the tax measure in its current form, and I'm going to reiterate some of the reasons that were said and also say what would get me past those things. I have grave concerns that it's a general tax in perpetuity. What would get me past that? A special tax with a sunset of 6 years. We're talking about $12 million annually, so 6 years is a tremendous amount of funding to bring in for the projects that have been identified. And then that could be voted on again in the future. I think we've also heard about how this problem isn't going away. We all recognize that, and there's a need for maintenance in the future, and I absolutely agree with that. But maintenance doesn't necessarily cost the same as first cost projects. So for example, a fuel break, constructing a fuel break sort of at the outset is very different from then going in and doing some maintenance and trimming around that fuel break. So perhaps in 6 years after a sunset, it goes back to the voters. Maybe it's a 0.25% sales tax at that point. My second point, this is not locally controlled. I really appreciate the proposal for a TAC for a citizens oversight committee. I still ultimately believe those to be inadequate because ultimately the TAC is only making recommendations. And we don't locally get to decide on funding uses with the exception of that $750,000 out of $12 million. So what would get me past that? A minimum of 17% of the funds must be remitted to the town to enter into an MOU with our fire district to spend those funds on projects at their discretion, locally controlled, since our best experts are our local experts here. I also want to know a minimum of 17% of those funds remitted to the town, and that is a floor for me. As our former supervisor Anderson noted in his very eloquent public comment, this really isn't a great metric because it doesn't take into account any of our visitor population and how we need to be planning for them. Another 13% of funds must be directed to Eastern County. That was outlined in the staff report. There is no certainty of terms, as Councilmember Zabriskie mentioned, so what would get me past that? I need a proposed and prepared binding agreement before the supervisors vote on this. All that said, I still share Councilmember Pollivy's concern that our constituents' stomach for more taxes and fees is very, very stretched right now. And if we do end up at a 9% sales tax, it really ties this council's hands on anything that's unforeseen, on anything that could come up in the future. It removes a tool from our toolbox that we may very well need in the future. So even getting to all of those pieces that I said, what would get me past that, I still have those concerns. And I can't even begin to describe the number of phone calls that I got from community members about this who were either opposed or said, what is going on? What's happening? We don't understand this right now. So with that, Jen, I think we've answered some of your questions here, but I think we also had questions on, I mean, of course we have several of our county supervisors and staff here. We're so grateful for you being here and being willing to listen. That speaks to our collaboration. I think that's really important. So you've heard some of our feedback. Jen, I know you're capturing a lot of our feedback as well. I think you also had a question though around whether, thank you for bringing it up, around whether you want staff to actually provide any type of written comments to the Board of Supervisors indicating town support, qualified support, opposition to the proposed tax measure. I think we're fairly aligned on our points of concern. I'm seeing some head nods. Yes. So I think the next question really is, how do my fellow council members feel about providing these comments? I think town staff has even offered to go down to the supervisors meeting if that is preferred. I'd love to hear your feedback on that, given that we're all on roughly the same page in terms of the concerns that we share.
Yeah, I think there's fairly consistent feedback, so I'm pretty sure Jen captured what she needed to. And I'm pretty sure we have some really respected county officials, both staff and electeds here, who also very clearly heard what we had to say. There's been a group meeting, right? There's been opportunity to create the security instrument. There's been opportunities at the very minimum to come to some of these agreements. So, I think Jen knows what her role is in this, right? I don't know what the plan is over the next 2.5 weeks, barely, maybe 15 or 16 days, and that's actual days, not working days, to get something done before that August 9th date. So I would say, I'm okay with continuing conversations up until that date. Should we get to the August 9th date, nothing has been secured or solidified, and we are at a point there, I'm not really sure what the next best step is. We can certainly provide Jen with some backing to go to represent what she heard tonight, should nothing change between now and then. I sort of look at this as a bit of a moving target, and that we might just, I don't know what to say. I think we want to stay out of it. I mean, I think the opportunity is there. The door has been open. Either the door is going to continue to be open over the next couple weeks and we're going to hash something out, or we're not. And, I've had some conversations with Supervisor Bullock about what he needs before the next before that meeting as well. So, hopefully those are accurate, reflections of what's going to happen there. We don't have another meeting between now and the 9th.
We do not.
That's correct.
Can I ask a clarifying question that might be helpful for county staff and town staff in our conversation? Is there an up to sunset cap that you'd like to see, like up to 10 years, up to 12 years? I heard 6, I heard 8. Or are you just interested in the sunset? Because that's probably important information for the county to know if they're willing to consider a sunset.
I heard 6.
I proposed 6, and that's what I'm comfortable with personally.
Measure T is 8 years. I'm fine with 8 years. The one thing I'd like to add in terms of going back to the Board of Supervisors, we've talked about the interest of our constituency here in Truckee. I think it's in the interest of our constituency that we reduce the wildfire risk throughout our county. I think this is a countywide problem. I think smoke in the west side is going to destroy the economy on the east side. I mean, a fire on the west side sending smoke to the east side is going to destroy our economy for that period.
people driving up Highway 80 through a desolate landscape are going to be less inclined to do so. And the people in Truckee that like to go outdoors and recreate, they don't stop at the town boundaries. They're going up in the Sierras and they're hitting the west side too. So this is a county-wide problem. But we still have these reservations.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. So I hear 8 years from council members Zabriskie. I'm going to turn to, and so at an estimated 12 million annually, 6 years is 72 million in estimations, right? In 8 years would be 96 million, just for context. Councilmember Palovich, do you have input on the sunset?
I mean, we were, Supervisor Bullock stood up and said he's got $81 million in projects, so I think 6 years sounds like enough to start with. Not that all those are going to get done at the same time, but we're going to collect a good amount of money. But I mean, I don't have a number on the sunset. To me, there's other overriding issues. The sunset is simply one of them. 6, 8, I don't care. Roll the dice.
Okay. Well, just to respond to Jen, Vice Mayor Romet?
I appreciate, I think, Councilmember Palovich, or I don't remember whom, said in an election year, so I think it's important that it's an even year. We don't want a special election, and I would say 8 years would be fine, no more than that.
And Councilmember Closett?
I'm comfortable within that range, between 6 and 8.
So I'm hearing up to 8. We're generally comfortable, Jen.
I think 6 would be great, but yeah, if they felt we really had to have that full 8 years, I could get behind that.
Okay, 6 to 8 it is. Jen, did you have any other clarifying questions while we're at it?
Well, so you could continue with your other council members and hear feedback, or I could maybe offer a suggestion based on Councilmember Polovich's comments. So I think I've consistently heard sunset period 6 to 8 years, reservations about the general tax and wishing that was a special tax. I would have to guess, and county staff can respond, but that's probably not a discussion point because they polled at this point. So you think you have to decide if you're going to be able to get comfortable with the general tax. Also, town control being another big piece that you all spoke to, and wanting to have more discretion with the town working with the fire district and how those dollars will be spent. And while you didn't explicitly say this, I'm assuming and asking for clarification that it is within those 4 buckets: planning, mitigation, response, recovery, that were outlined in the presentation. And then the probably second most important piece for all of you was a security agreement that's binding. I heard a suggestion about annual reporting. There is the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee that's proposed, so we can engage in more details of how that could happen. So those were the consensus items I think I heard. So what we could do is continue to engage with county staff over the next couple of weeks, see how close we can move along the line with any of these items. To the extent we don't get anywhere, we could provide public comment to the board and just these are the things we would like to ask for consideration before being able to support the item. Is that sounding like something you can support?
I think that sounds great. I would encourage you, if you can, to go down and be part of the meeting because, of course, as we have just done this evening, the dialogue and the interaction is very important, and I would love to have you make that contribution. And if any of the other council members can join her, I think that would be that would speak volumes to our interest in this goal in global policy with representing our community and its needs.
And I think I also heard, and you can point out, that as a council you support the guiding principles and goals of this measure. Just haven't quite gotten to how you're going to be able to get behind it.
I feel like I have sort of an outstanding question from my fellow council members. So we've expressed a lot of concern with the tax measure, sort of what we know about it thus far. But I also heard concerns, and it's one of mine as well, that if we get close to that cap, it really does limit our abilities in terms of what we can do locally in the future. So let's just say a hypothetical, we get to all of the places of sort of agreement with the county on the things that we've delineated, a sunset, etc. How do you feel then? Are you still going to, are those concerns still going to outweigh any support for this?
Yeah, and I don't think we need to answer that right now because we don't know what we're being presented with. And I think what Jen so diplomatically pointed out were the things that we do agree upon and that we can agree. She's not going to stand up there, and I think we can give that explicit instruction like, hey, if we get to all of this, right, I don't know what my counsel's going to say, but this is what we wanted, right? So I think that's really the balance that she can provide is she's not necessarily supporting, opposing, or staying neutral. She's saying, hey, this is what the town of Truckee would like to see. Maybe they'll support it if we can get all of those things. But I don't think there's any talk of support or opposition from our town manager on August 9th at this point because we are not taking action on this. We're simply providing direction. So I'm comfortable with her articulating our goals without articulating a position.
So in terms of process, what would happen is after August 9th, if this is placed on the ballot, we would have a follow-up discussion if you want to support, oppose, or stay neutral on the item. I think what the county staff is taking away and realizing is that you won't support it for sure without these added items.
Right.
There's a chance of support, or sometimes neutrality is just as good as support in some cases, and that's a conversation you can have in probably September.
That sounds great. That's a great clarification, Jen, on process. Thank you for that. So with that, any other clarifying questions, Jen, or anything else that you need for just feedback and direction?
I think I'm clear as long as my summary was sufficient for you all.
Yeah, I think it was. Everyone? Yes? Yes? Okay. Well, again, thank you so much, Supervisor Hall, Supervisor Bullock, Allison, Carissa, thank you so much for coming and being with us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more agenda item this evening. 7.4 Town Council Priorities and Work Plan Quarterly Update for the period ending June 30th, 2022. Lots of good detail in this one, and Jen, we are right back over to you tonight.
Yes, we're going to continue on this journey together for the rest of the evening. But this item I think will be fairly quick because you're used to seeing it by now. This is our quarterly update for the period ending June 30th. Just again, repeat council priorities, housing, climate initiatives, community cohesion and communication, key infrastructure and connectivity, and partnership for emergency preparedness and wildfire readiness and mitigation. Some items that have been complete or have risen to the level of substantially complete. So this is not the comprehensive list, of course, but these are new items since the last quarterly report. Expand consultant support for housing program administration, housing resources page for the town of Truckee. Current and potential employees is well underway and being updated. We're lucky to have Lynn in her new role, and she is our town website expert, at least one of them, so she's made good progress on that. Our climate action and sustainability priority, you have recently adopted a BMT thresholds policy. There were discussions with Town of Forest Hospital for cafeteria reusables. They have not chosen to move forward with that at this time, so we're going to move on to other conversations. The Climate Transformation Alliance has launched, so that item is considered complete. As projects come forward, we would bring those forward as individual items. Establish and maintain regional partners, and then substantially complete, establish real-time municipal GHG tracking dashboard. The consultant has been hired, and that is in progress. Explore employee bike at work program feasibility. We do have a handful of e-bikes from B-Cycle that arrived on site, so while that project has been delayed, we were having conversations if we could perhaps deploy them as an employee bike program. housing retrofit pilot program and requirements for sustainable community certification, and that is in alignment with BTT's objectives. For our communications and community cohesion, Ron's done a great job of establishing relationships and regional partners. We now include updates monthly in the Tahoe Donner newsletter. We have contracts with the radio station. We communicate with Glenshire HOA. So she's made a lot of those connections already. Infrastructure and community connectivity, substantially complete, negotiate with Truckee Sanitary District regarding the price and terms for the library land parcel. That's considered substantially complete in the sense that there's a new direction with that item, and that the sanitation district and rec district are interested and engaged in conversations on a land swap. So we're participating and helping to facilitate to the extent that we can. Town involvement in JPA consideration and formation process. We've been engaged in all the conversations with the county and the JPA consultant, as well as the Friends of the Library. And then transit center relocation, land acquisition, and planning. Emergency partnerships. The right-of-ways fuels reduction project is now complete. Just to be very clear on that, that is for the budgeted project. That does not mean there couldn't be a potential future project. But for what was included in the adopted budget, that is complete. GIS support for fire district partnership efforts. Partnership with Nevada and Placer County OES for seamless response during a major incident. And then substantially complete explore potential partnerships with existing biomass. Update review the emergency operations plan. You'll be hearing a report back on that on August 9th. Ensure that there's a required FEMA training and establish a communication plan for emergencies. Significant work items that have begun during the last quarter. Work with special districts on agenda monitoring that so that we can have wider distribution of packets without printing them. Contract with consultants who support town sustainability goals and initiatives. We have our Reach Code consultants on board now and engaged in those conversations. Our Art Commission work plan and opportunity site prioritization work has begun, as well as the West River Street site redevelopment, Pioneer Trail and Bridge Street extension, and local hazard mitigation plan. We have not added any new items to the bike rack. There was a Council and Planning Commission discussion about a climate incentives and initiatives working group. We didn't add that. That's open for council discussion. We do want to be very clear there's not capacity to add that in. So if that's something the council is interested in, we'd come back with likely a number of items that would get delayed because that's a fairly substantial work effort at the moment. And then wanted to give you, this is a little different than past reports, but some other significant updates. Some of our task items are very broad in nature, so while we're moving along and completing them, you don't necessarily see them in our updates every quarter. You obviously have all been engaged in the general plan conversations recently, number of meetings in June, you have a number of meetings in August and September, and anticipated adoption in November of 2022. So thank you to the staff for all their efforts in that. It's a monumental feat, the council and the planning commission for your participation in extra meetings, and the community for their engagement. Microtransit. So a quick snapshot of the report. This was also included in the staff report. We're averaging about 205 passengers per day. That's 17 passengers per hour. 15% of rides are shared. And ridership by zone, 8% in Glenshire, 23% in Tahoe Donner, 2% with the hospital, 3% at the lake, and 64% in the downtown zone. So good feedback and results from microtransit thus far. And then just to reiterate, our e-bike program is delayed until the spring due to a number of issues. Some of them, most of them COVID related in terms of supply chain. The town is engaged with B-Cycle on potentially providing storage for the service as the bikes do come in. So Dan and his team and Alfred are engaged in those conversations currently. So with that, we're asking you for any feedback to receive the quarterly report. And again, this is a really large staff effort with every department division participating and contributing to the updates. So thanks to everybody in your involvement and contributions.
Thank you very much, Jen. I really appreciate it. I personally love these quarterly updates. They're so informative, and it's incredible to see all the progress that we're all making together in terms of these goals. So thank you. Let's start with any questions. Councilmember Zabriskie, I'd love to start with you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you. Excellent report.
Very concise. Okay. Councilmember Glowstead, any questions?
My only question goes back to the climate initiative group discussion. When, based on what we have in our current priorities, understanding that there could be a new council in January, but based on what we have and what you're working towards, when could this be added to as a task?
So I'll jump in and then I'll ask Hillary to add anything that she wants to or may have missed. But I think this would fall really nicely into the new work plan adoption with the new council that's discussed in February. I assume climate in some form would be a council priority. If it is, by the time we finish our REACH code discussion, which will wrap up the end of this year, our general plan adoption, some of the action items in the general plan could help guide this working group. So that my timing would be beginning of next calendar year for discussion. Usually start the new work plan in that last quarter of this fiscal year. Hillary, is there anything? Okay, she's supportive of that.
And that makes sense, because I agree with you. I think we need to finish the general plan, not just for capacity's sake, but also for direction on those things to have clarity. So thank you.
Relatedly, really quickly, could it be placed in the bike rack if council, we could decide tonight that we want to place that in the bike rack just so we don't lose sight of it?
Yeah, so you could certainly place it in the bike rack, understand that that's the time frame, and when we engage in the council retreat in February, we'll bring the bike rack to the new council and say these were kind of the priorities the previous council was looking at. Do you want to continue those?
Perfect, thank you. Vice Mayor Romack, any questions?
No questions, but share sentiments that it's a joy to read this report. It's just fun to see all the work that's been done. So thanks to all the staff.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, I don't have any further questions either. So we will, we don't have anyone, I don't think, left from the public at this point. So we will open and very promptly close public comment and move into if there's anything that you do want to deliberate on, council members, including whether you would like the climate incentives working group added to the bike rack.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Great. My only comment is, well, not to. Thank you so much for, over the year or so, you have incorporated adding these cross-referencing of different goals, and that is so helpful because so much of what we're working on in these goals really do interconnect, and one can't be successful without the other. So I just want to thank staff for that. I know it's additional challenge, and it's a very large file and hard to kind of manage, but I really appreciate that. And then, yes, I would love to have that added to the bike rack for discussion at the next priority session.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Roma.
Yes, add this to the bike rack. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sullivan.
This is how we add things to the bike rack. Damn, I missed out. Yeah, it's fine.
You can add something right now.
I'm good. I'm all good.
Okay, Jen, so I think
my only other comment is, where is the public? This is the good stuff. This is what we're doing. I'm sorry. I had to say it. I hope you're watching out there, because this is the good stuff.
I'm public.
Okay, so Jen, I think the only thing is to put this working group into the bike rack to come back in the priority setting session in February.
Will do, and we'll make note of that in the notes, so that's the time frame we're expecting.
That would be great, thank you. Okay, with that, council reports. Councilmember Paulby.
Nothing to report other than lots of conversations leading up to this meeting, but no other official meetings, I don't think, over the past few weeks. No, we don't have Visit Truckee in July, so yeah, nothing.
Okay, great. Vice Mayor Romack.
yeah, lots of discussions with folks on our item 2 items ago. So thanks to all the public for reaching out on that. Also attended the TMA meeting 2 weeks ago. Alfred gave a presentation on microtransit. You saw some of the statistics here, but again, we're seeing great numbers of participation. It'd be great to see the shared rides go up a little bit, but keep telling your friends and neighbors to ride Tart Connect. Also last Friday, it was the Mountain Housing Council quarterly meeting. Thanks to Hillary, she gave great updates on what the town's been up to, heard from some other groups as well. There were some questions related to Coldstream Commons and the rail yard and residents in those and things we've heard before. So thanks to Hillary for providing some clarification. There was also discussion, how can the Mountain Housing Council get better information out to the public on some of the concerns from the community around that. So just a good conversation. And that's about it.
Thank you. Over to this side.
Yes, many conversations with constituents over this past week, which I actually really welcome, both about the tax and continuing conversations about the concerns of housing and who we're building housing for. And again, I just want to really encourage everybody to go to the town's website and look at that press release and the kind of the background information, because it is complicated. And the more we're all informed, the better we can make future decisions. Then in terms of actual meetings, we had a 2-hour-long Reach Code meeting where we were assessing basically the committees or the stakeholders' interest in different measures and reaches. Are we educating? Are we incentivizing? Are we mandating? Are we setting a certain date to accomplish these things by? And staff and the consultant utilized a online survey question, which I thought was really great because I felt like we got almost everybody engaged. Almost every single answer or question was answered by almost every single attendee. And I thought that was really unique and really beneficial in the process, and to just really see how comfortable people were with those different extensions of that possible ordinance that we might be looking at in the future. And then we had a Tahoe Basin Biomass Task Force meeting last week where we reviewed the MOU for all the agencies to work collaboratively on the biomass and bioenergy possibility. And we also had a robust discussion about the tipping fees and how to most equitably negotiate those given the large volumes of the different types of feedstock. And it's amazingly complicated. You would think, oh, we just have all this fuel that we need to get out and we can burn it, but it's not that easy, because a lot of it coming from the green waste bins is pine needles and pine cones, and that's not really good, harvestable fuel. So a lot of discussions there. And then most importantly, we had the climate transformation kickoff meeting, and it was a great group that were quite charged up. And we have the next meeting is October 14th. And everybody has been engaged to bring one more person with them, either an agency or a business or a nonprofit. And in the meantime, I welcome anybody to reach out to me if they're interested in learning more.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Attended the Nevada County Transportation Commission meeting where part of the discussion is about addressing climate-related emergencies, and whether we have a sufficient network for responding and evacuating throughout the county. I participated in the Truckee River Watershed Council stream monitoring last week, and while I didn't attend the Reach Code meeting, which I regret, I would love to have been there. It's great to hear how well it went. Good. I was involved in getting ready for it.
Okay, thank you. So I also attended our CTA meeting launch and was really excited at how well attended it was. It really is a regional effort. There were so many stakeholders at the table. And we also have stakeholders who are missing, who we still need to bring to the table, right? Our realtor community and builders and those at some of our other districts. So just to sort of reiterate the plea, if you're interested, reach out because we really want this to be a regional initiative. I met with some downtown business owners, also talking a lot about workforce housing and sort of what is in the pipeline, what's coming next, how we're trying to crack that nut, if you will. I met with a developer who has developed a lot of different low-income developments in the state, along with Jen and Danielle, and thank them both for their time and going into that meeting with me. I spoke with Supervisor Gustafson and Mayor Linda Salcido of Mammoth Lakes about decarbonization efforts and solutions in their districts, and then also met with a tremendous number of people related to the proposed fire tax this evening. So I think that pretty much sums it up for me. So with that, we will adjourn to closed session and then the Truckee Town Council meeting on August 9th at 5 p.m. here at Town Hall. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
I assume I stop recording now.
Well, but it was open session only. So whoever gets closest to 80 wins.
Yeah.